Good eye. Ancient Mahara here. I am live. What do you know? It did it to me again. Poof! Makes you live and you don't even have to hit the go live button. I know why though. I have figured that out. So there you go. I was gonna be live streaming about an hour ago, but it was on my, I've had it for a month or so, new HP Omen gaming laptop. I don't game, but they render videos faster. And then it decided it needed a BIOS update. No, never mind. Anyways, I'm here now. So, the topic is partially blocked. BPD relationships victimize you. Victim blaming and victim shaming and the trauma bonds and the reality that in these relationships, people really get victimized. That might not come as any news to some people, but hey, there are people out there that say you can't be a victim, really. You just can't be. Um, oh, that was quick. Somebody left a message and took it back too, so I didn't get to see it. Oh, anyway, I'm just kidding when I go, oh, okay, I've got the wrong window open here. Just a moment. Okay. Where did my window go? Uh, lethal BPD relationships, you say? Well, they are. Not all the same, but they can be really, really traumatizing, devastating, shattering in so many ways. And, well, I'll start somewhere and I'll go from there. How's that? So, some people with BPD definitely have what's known as a victim mentality, a victim mindset. And what's behind that is really the fact that, yeah, borderline personality disorder being the trauma response that it is, whether you still call it a serious mental illness or not, doesn't matter to me, or somebody else does, or anybody else does. But the bottom line is they were victimized in childhood, so okay. But then when they become, adult age, they have to take responsibility for that, and they have to get into treatment. And it's not okay to abuse anybody. And hey there, Sarah. Adrian, you said that you're from a lethal BPD relationship. I'm sorry to hear that. And then you said, thank you for saving my life. Well, whatever part I had in that, you're very welcome. Sarah, I can't stay long. Cool. Hey there, Charlie. Hey, Jay, it's so hard when the BPDX doesn't see she needs help. With now lost 2 kids because of her selfishness. I'm so sorry to hear that. Because yes, the carnage that occurs to children when they have an untreated borderline mother, not unlike a narcissistic mother or parent, but often the most wounding is going to be the untreated BPD mother. And so I think it's really important to remember that. Well, no, it's not important, really. It's just important that I say that people with BPD have been victimized in childhood more often than not. Actually, 87% of the time are the new stats. But it doesn't give them a license to do that to other people, right? So that's a really big deal. And there's no sanctioning that. There's no excusing that whatsoever. So, there are people out there that think, well, if you're with somebody with BPD, you're not really a victim because, like, somehow you chose it. But no, I don't believe in that because if you're with somebody with BPD, you certainly didn't know what you were signing up for. And even if somebody told you ahead of time, well, I have BPD. Okay, good. But people don't know what that means. Unless you get into it, you discover it. You have to research, you have to Google, you have to try to figure it all out, right? So definitely people are, I mean, why would it be called a trauma bond if people weren't victims and victimized, right? And Charlie said, I know I'm suffering a lot because of it. She has ghosted me, moved on, yet I'm left worse. Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear that. And that's where you need your own healing and recovery journey because her moving on is just her going to the next repeat. And then of course, yeah, you're left with, when there's children involved too, it's just terrible, but it's terrible for people. Um, and Sarah asks, is an untreated father just as bad as an untreated mother for kids? What about young adult kids who still live with the ex? Um, oh, live with the dad, with the ex, or yeah, okay, the person with BPD. Um, well, a person with BPD untreated as a father is going to be not very healthy for the kids. It depends where each woman mother is. With codependency and everything, people usually are fairly good mothers. And then so it's not usually the when people get diagnosed with BP, it usually comes from something to do with interrupted attachment, perceived or actual abandonment, emotionally or otherwise, between zero, like just born, to two. So, but BPD fathers can do a lot of damage on top of that, but the damage is kind of already done in that case, usually. Hard to say, but yeah, hard to say. And the other thing is, I think when you say untreated mother, I don't know if you mean an untreated mother with BPD, but an untreated mother with BPD is a nightmare for children. And so, but maybe a mother with codependency not treated, no, there can still be a lot of love and a lot of the children's needs met. And maybe they might become a little bit codependent, but they're unlikely to develop BPD. And I think also that even young adult kids, I mean, I know it's tough in the world right now, but probably not the healthiest for them to stay with an untreated borderline, for sure, like father. Um, and Charlie, what do you suggest I do to recover? Well, it's highly individual, but generally speaking, the first thing you have to do is work on focusing on yourself, um, understanding whether or not you have codependency, because most people do, but not everybody. And then working with someone is really the answer because it's really hard for people to overcome the devastation and the victimization and the trauma and, break the trauma bond. Look at what, in codependency, what wounded you, not only in the relationship, but that goes back to childhood. So there's a lot of moving pieces to recovery. And, it depends if you believe that you're codependent or not, because most people are, but not everybody, like I said. So, but there's a real, what was I going to say? There's so much victimization that goes on. Okay, well, I won't say anything right now when people are, Sarah said, seems like untreated dad can be so aggressive and really damaging. I'm working to get my kids to move out ASAP. Well, yeah, it would be the best thing for them. And I'm sure it's not easy, but definitely because they're going to be being victimized as well. Manipulated, used, yelled or screamed at, or whatever's going on with that person. The ex with BPD, or the father in your case with the BPD. Charity, yeah, I suffer with abandonment from my parents. So you do think you're codependent. Okay, well, so you have a multi-layered, as many people do, recovery there, journey to take. So it would be really important to get working with someone and to, because I know, like, I don't know how other people do it, but when I work with clients, I help them to work on the relationship and that recovery, as well as getting in touch with family of origin issues and do the inner child healing work and things, because they're really close together. Like they're two moving pieces. And the more people can get into the codependency recovery, it can really help with the recovery from the relationship. And then there's some things about the relationship people can understand more about that can help maybe somewhat in codependency recovery. So it's that's the way I work with clients. Not saying everybody would do it that way. Oh, thanks for that, Sarah. He said, yep, work with AJ. That I know my stuff and I've lived it. Well, thank you for that. I mean, yes. So I just wanted to say a little bit about the difference between a victim identity, pardon me, or a victim mentality, or people that are victimized. So people with BPD often victimized in childhood, but then they have a victim identity for lack of identity, right? They have a victim mindset wherein everything is negative for them. And and it's different than, people with codependency, various levels of victimization, and really feeling like a victim, of course, right after things happen. And then in healing and recovery, people start to work through that, so that you don't stay stuck in the victimization that you've suffered, really, right? So, and there's just a couple things I wanted to look up here about, or that are in my notes actually, about the victim identity or mentality, really, It's it's an elongated lifetime pattern for people with BPD of self-pity. Even though, in childhood it's understandable. They didn't ask for this. They didn't hurt them. They were victimized. But it becomes a drop in the bucket compared to what happens when we're dealing with someone with, like this, like people with BPD, this full-blown identity, victim identity. So the belief systems of the person, usually with BPD in this case, right, with a victim identity or mentality, go something like this, right? Life is really, really hard. Don't get up or you'll just get kicked back down again. And by the way, these are things that not people with BPD don't think consciously, but it's sort of the mindset. Beware always of trickery. It's around every corner. In other words, people with BPD and their victim mindset and identity don't trust. Well, they can't trust themselves because they don't have a self. So, yeah, they can't trust anyone. People with a victim identity with BP often will say, I can't. And then sometimes that overflows into people with codependency, like, I can't let her go. I can't let him go. I can't accept this. I got to do something about it. I can't. So that can happen to people who've been victimized by somebody with BPD in a trauma bonded relationship. And that's something that codependents have to work on sometimes. So, to the victim identity of people with BPD untreated, you just don't understand how hard it is for me. Like, I just need validation. I just need you to love me. But they don't give you any love back and they don't take the love in. So, everybody's always picking on me would be another thing that they would have a sort of negative core belief about. And and they can have a real inferiority complex, and sometimes that can be overcompensatorily looking like a superiority complex. And these belief systems are in place to protect the victim from ever having to really engage life or overcome some hurdles in life. And when they're doing this and in this victim identity or mindset, um, boy, just to stay on the downside, they end up staying on the best way they can cope, and they end up staying on the downside of life, so to speak. And some people expect more and some people don't. But the victim will definitely complain and even whine to others about how hard life is. And, the victim narrative of a lot of people online with BPD is like, but, you just gotta love us more. You just gotta love us better. You just gotta validate us. Like, there's nothing in there about you, right? It's all about them. So, and of course, the secondary gain for the victim identity, victim mindset of so many with BPD, and not everybody with BPD is the same, is in fact that they can get people to stay and take care of them in just this way. So for whoever really would leave the poor victim without feeling terribly guilty. And sometimes for people with BPD that's conscious and sometimes it's not. And so they can just, yeah, it's learned helplessness. It is the not, people with BPD don't have emotional intelligence. Intellectual, yes, but emotional, no. They're not emotionally mature. And so living in a victim identity is a fact that many victims actually do attract bullies as their partners, but not always. And I certainly don't want to forward the myth that, oh, borderlines get along with narcissists and borderlines will stay with narcissists longer, because that's not true either. People end up with narcissists when probably they're in a repetition with BPD or otherwise codependence when you're in a repetition compulsion and maybe you had a narcissistic parent. It's not anything that people with BPD want either, though. Neither do people with codependency. But because the victim doesn't believe he or she will ever get anything or anyone better, so it is why, they're trying to get people to stay, or maybe they'll stay, but their trauma bonds, even if it's a person with BPD with a narcissist or a person with codependency with a borderline or narcissist, it's the trauma bond. And often it's because for people with BPD, but also for codependents, because people feel like they don't deserve better. And again, it can be an unconscious belief. And it's a belief based on magical thinking and appears to be kept alive sometimes for people with BPD for a lifetime. And so, yeah, not taking responsibility, not knowing how to take responsibility for their own lives, people with BPD, they just can't do that for fear that things would get, well, a whole lot more anxiety producing, a whole lot more difficult, and be a lot more triggering, because they're often really triggered, as we know, easily by things, which goes back to childhood again. But that was just a little bit about that. Now, what am I doing here? Okay, there we go. So, Charlie said, I would love to. I just don't have the funds. Yeah, that's something that people, I mean, things are tough for people in general and all around these days. You said that you're now homeless, jobless because I had to move back home for 6 months ago. So sorry to hear that. Um, and oh, I see. Sarah said, and then Charlie said, yeah, that you watch a lot of my videos, probably in a lot of videos in general, because people do, and that's really good that there are videos out there and everything to help people, and including mine. But the only thing with that really is that you can't truly get into the healing and recovery process just by watching videos. Maybe some people disagree with that or think that you can, but I don't think that's really how that works. And the depth of this woundedness for people with codependency after, and maybe the love addiction, maybe the trauma bonded. It's hard to break a trauma bond on one's own or just by listening to videos. You'll learn a lot about it, but then it becomes really difficult to do a lot about it. So I just wonder why, there's so much said on the internet or in various different places about, if you're with somebody with BPD, or if you've been with somebody with BPD, that you can't be a victim because you chose it, or something like that, which is a false equivalency, because nobody chooses it knowingly, right? Nobody goes, oh, this person's gonna abuse me. I'm gonna get into a trauma bond. I'm gonna be like, addicted to the person because they're gonna be so good in the beginning, but not really real, and I won't know that. And they're gonna idealize me, and then they're gonna devalue me. Like nobody does that, not knowingly. So I think it's really important to realize that when you are someone with codependency and you have been victimized by a borderline, untreated usually borderline, it's really important to make sure you do get into a healing recovery journey when you can. And yes, look for support like through videos and things online in the meantime if you can't, because you want to make sure that you're starting to look at mindfulness and practice and radical acceptance so that you can start moving forward out of that victim role. However, to do that, it does require breaking the trauma bond. So it's really important to go no contact, equally as difficult as it is important. Many people struggle with that. So, yeah, what else did I want to talk about here? There's a lot of misinformation out there about BPD and about people with codependency and being in these relationships. But what's really important is that, like the other thing too is that people with BPD untreated again, because they're not all the same, but they will definitely victim blame you, right? And victim shame you. And then is that gaslighting or not in BPD? Well, I'm not sure if it's gaslighting like narcissist gaslight, because again, borderline personality isn't narcissistic personality disorder, and they're not the same thing. As you know, I've seen people say on YouTube they're the same thing. That's not true. Even the American Psychiatric Association seems to have two different categories or two different quote personality disorders there in the same cluster, right? Along with another one that can't possibly be a personality disorder, but never mind. So it's really important to, yeah, start to learn the language of your pain, of getting in touch with your emotions, because that includes everything from anger to the pain, the hurt, the devastation, the disappointment, the confusion, the cognitive dissonance, all of that. But of course, to do that when one isn't in a process of working with someone can be pretty overwhelming. So people have to kind of look for ways to focus on themselves more and to be able to understand that right now, things are really hard, things are really tough. Maybe you can't stop thinking about them. Maybe even though they really treated you horribly and abused you, maybe you still miss them and maybe you still want them back. And that's cognitive dissonance and a whole lot of other things. Sarah, I agree. I've learned a lot, but there is a lot of pain and lots of goodness when I do the work. It's tough being a codependent with BPDX. So much trauma and need to be strong. Well, yeah, and there's an element of needing to be strong, but there's also an element of needing to be okay with vulnerability. And again, when you're working with someone or when you're doing that work, however you're doing that work, and I don't just mean you, but anybody, um, to be able to be getting in touch with feelings and emotions and radically accepting that and being okay with that, which can be really complicated and difficult for people after these relationships, because if for people with codependency, wounds do go back to childhood, and so without healing the wounded inner child, there's still there's a duality of pain and all the emotions there, and then people might be able to make some progress in the here and now in a way. But one of the things, like one of the big signs you have a wounded inner child is when, first of all, you've identified with and continue to try to love an abuser, right? It's like what a trauma bond is about. But when you break away from them, or if you've gone no contact, or you're trying, or whatever the case, then the degree to which, in the cognitive dissonance and everything, you will long for them and miss them. And then what do you do with that, right? And how do you go from that to focusing on yourself? These are all the challenges out there for people. So, and newer understandings of codependency would suggest that Codependence Anonymous could help somebody. If you're interested in that kind of thing, I have a website, Soul Self Help. I'll just type it in actually, because it's been there since like 1995 with this link and everything. Because I'm not unaware about Codependence Anonymous, and it might help some people, but again, it is not a recovery vehicle. And then it depends if you get with a group that is actually functional or dysfunctional, because both can exist. So the link I just typed in, there's a free resource where you can just go and read the 12 steps and some information about them if you're interested in that, as something that you can do um, for yourself if you can't be working with somebody right now. But I think that's the optimal way to deal with these things. So, and if anybody has any questions, please feel free to jump in here. But because I didn't really get a whole bunch of information together before I started today, like I usually do, and more often than not will for live streams. But the narrative out there, like well, I guess I shouldn't insert this here, but because what we're talking about here, and people who are suffering, and people who are watching videos, and people who are whether it's on and off, or they ghosted you, or you don't know what's going on, or you've left them, or all these different circumstances. I forgot what I was going to say. It's yeah, people. We're talking about people with BPD that are largely untreated here. So they may make up the majority of people with BPD right now, or there's a pool of people that have BPD that are undiagnosed and don't even know it. So we're not talking about, I'm not talking about, just want to make this delineation, not that it matters to most people here, but we're not talking about all people with BPD, because all people with BPD aren't in the same place. All people with BPD don't remain untreated. There are people getting substantial treatment, making substantial changes. I work with some of them. There are people that have healed and recovered. So, but obviously, we're not here to talk about the people that have healed and recovered, right? Because if that was the case, you'd all be happy instead of hurting. Chubang Boon, hey there. Um, no, I'm glad. I'm glad you're slowly moving forward, and I'm glad my videos are helpful for you. And yeah, Roller Girl, I know you're a great listener. I wonder, do you ever have like something to share or a question, maybe? Because a lot of people are in listening mode. Nothing wrong with that. Um, Sarah, friends and family can't understand why I stayed so long. Well, no, they don't. Because if they haven't been through it, they don't know what it is. They don't understand. And you were treated so badly. And thanks for making me feel better about why I stayed and how complicated it is. Well, and it is very complicated, and I mean, and when you've been with somebody with BPD untreated, who's, maybe pretty scary in a lot of ways, uh, people with codependency, and you get beaten down by the relationship. That's another part of the victimization. You get beaten down by the relationship and you feel even worse about yourself because you're losing the part of yourself that you did know. Because people with codependency don't have like no self, like people with BPD, if they're untreated. But then it gets even harder to leave because if it's not the cognitive dissonance or the love addiction or other aspects, it's sometimes just fear of leaving, which is, formidable and in some cases super serious, like in terms of real danger physically. But there's a lot of harm that's happened psychologically and emotionally. People get beaten down and then they feel like, well, like then you have less self-worth and less self-esteem. And then often the borderline abuser will say, nobody else will want you anyway. You like they'll just shame you and make you, well, not make you, but you'll end up feeling way worse about yourself. So there's many different arms of the complicated nature of getting away from these people and getting out of the relationships for sure. Roller Girl, my BPD narc boyfriend of 7 years moved in with me, and we have good moments and not so good, then good again. Well, I mean, everybody makes their own choices, and in choosing to have him move in with you and be in that relationship, then whether you knew it or not before, what you need to know now is you've chosen a roller coaster from hell. Okay, and that's going to be complicated. And you said he's BPD NPD, so, and by the way, new stats are sort of putting forth that the comorbidity between BPD and NPD might just only be 16%, but still, that any percentage is a lot of people, right? But yeah, you're definitely on, well, maybe that's why you have the name Roller Girl. I don't know, or do you like to roller skate or something? But you're on a roller coaster, and so yeah, I'm sure when it's good, it can be really good. But when it's not good, it's really really bad. And that's a tough balance to walk, because in staying in that kind of relationship, you're going to be losing more and more of yourself one way or another. But everybody makes their own choices. I fully respect that. Hey there, car girl. Yeah, you just got here. Well, welcome. Um, oh, jeez. I've got rid of most of the houseflies, but they keep multiplying. They, and you know what? They don't bother me much until I do a live stream. Must be all this light. Not that I'm always in the abject dark. Anyways, it's dry in here. Sorry about that. Um, Roller girl. He would be homeless too. Well, so you're maybe taking on some extra responsibility so he's not homeless. I don't know. Um, So he's going to school next month, and then we'll get his own place. Um, oh, you're a rollerblader. Okay, cool. Because you're probably also on a roller coaster of a relationship. But yeah, fair enough. Um, and Sarah said, I've been told I will fall, fall. Sorry, I can't see some of this right. White on black. I've been told I will fail from him. Wait a minute. Yeah. So he told you that you'll fail. Okay. He tells me I'll end up miserable and living a life as an old lady alone. Yeah, well, that's pretty projective, except he's going to be the old man alone, right? His speech is so crazy and mean. Yeah, well, I mean, and people at BPD project out what's really true about them. So he's saying that about you, but this is common for anybody who's abusive to try to tell the other person that, like, I don't know, what comes to mind for me is when I was a kid and my narc parents were like, who the hell do you think you are? You're never going to amount to anything. All these kind of statements that, a lot of people with untreated BPD and a lot of narcissists make regularly to people. And, and it takes, when, when you've just been through all this in the relationship, it's pretty hard not to take that in or take that on, right? Because people have to work in healing and recovery to really be able to get to that stronger place or, more bounded place of whatever they say or think about me is none of my business, right? So, this fly's going to drive me nuts now just cause. John, hey there. Do BPDs, um, monkey branch. Do BPDs monkey branch? I don't know if I know what that means. You said my quiet BP devalued and discarded me after a 10-year relationship. Now she's dating some other guy after 2 months. So does monkey branch just mean like jump from one to the next? That's what I'm going to go with here. Um, well, I'm really sorry to hear that, first and foremostly. And secondly, um, a lot of people, oh, yes, okay, so I got that meaning right. A lot of people with BPD, untreated, definitely don't know how to be alone and definitely will either line up that next person before or really quickly after. And there's nothing healthy about that, though. And it's important to know that, like I'm so sorry that happened to you, and after a 10-year relationship, because even though it was maybe not 10 years of bliss, that's a long time, and they, a lot of people with BPD today, and it doesn't matter what age they are, but like even younger, like 20s, 30s, 40s, younger, because that's younger than me, um, are definitely into this ghosting and just taking off and grabbing the next person. And, like I've said in a few videos before, it was unheard of 10 or 15 years ago online and with clients I was working with, and what was written on all the message boards and the different forums and whatever existed back then. It was not like that. So there's something changing about BPD for so many, something morphing, and also I think it's the effect of social media. But I'm sure none of that is not going to help because, you got to be in a devastated place. And she was a quiet borderline. So I don't know, like how much were you even aware of, or how was the relationship for 10 years generally? And was this like a real shock? Because it can be with a quiet borderline, and even if it's not a real shock, it's still really devastating. Cargirl, oh yeah, reminding everybody to hit the like button. Thank you. Um, so yeah, like the reality, right? And I don't want to be, but to just be more completely accurate about BPD, the reality that people have been victimized in their childhood, often 87% with BPD, traumatized and victimized. But it doesn't make it right or okay at all that they do that to others. And yet, the reality of wounded people that hurt people and the whole idealization in the beginning and what people, I mean, yeah, I've had so many people tell me, it just feels fabulous and there's so much that's so great about it. But you can't know at that moment what's really happening, and that they don't really see you more in idealization than they actually do in devaluation, because again, their lens and unconsciously inside of them is everything. Everybody's like one of their parents, either good or parent never had, or bad parent, and so that's the sad part about that, is people suffer, people love these people, and untreated borderlines don't even see you, or rarely ever see you. um yeah, take care, Sarah. And Keith, that woman that I was married to for 23 years that cheated on me has BPD, and she went ahead and got married, not to that guy, but somebody else, and she's throwing her out of her house, throwing got married to someone, not married to that guy, but married to someone else, and she's throwing, so is it a she, throwing her out of her home now. Wow. Yeah, you said what a piece of work. Well, yeah, there's no excuse for that stuff. I mean, I could explain it till the cows come home, but that doesn't really help, does it? I'm really sorry to hear that, because you were married for 23 years. Wow. Because that's the other thing is happening more and more. There's been these long-term marriages, and all of a sudden it's like overnight they just flip a switch, which I don't know what that's about, and they're gone. And then they go through other people much more quickly, especially if they've been in a relationship for a long time, which, many people with BPD are, and many aren't ever. Um, and John, I knew she was, quote, crazy, unquote. She was pressuring marriage for years, but I couldn't do it because she was too abusive. However, she wouldn't let me leave um, through her abandonment fears. And then she ghosted you. Yes. Well, I'm really sorry to hear that, because at least you did know, you had an instinct, or you were aware and had a boundary that, you didn't get into marriage. I mean, that's one thing to be grateful for right now. But and Keith said that woman is horrible, and I wish I never married her. Boy, if I could have talked to my young self, I could tell you that. I would have headed for the hills. Yeah, I totally hear you, and I mean, in 23 years is such a long time, right? It's like, I think the longer a relationship is, the more difficult the healing can be often, and it's devastating, because I'm sure, like, I don't know, some people go through long-term marriages with people with BPD that are really rocky, and that are really like lots of breakups and lots of on. But some people, and if the person is quite BPD, it doesn't always work that way. And of course, I can well understand how you feel, Keith. That if you knew back then what you were getting into, yeah, you definitely wouldn't have wanted to do that. And of course, 23 years ago, where was the information? Like it's everywhere today, but still, it doesn't help people from getting involved with people with BPD, because they don't know what it is. Still, there's no reason, if someone has no reason to have reference for it. So it's still happening today, even though there's more information out there. And Keith said, I think a borderline personality disorder narcissist, well, they're not all. Some can be comorbid, but borderlines and narcissists aren't exactly the same. But I'm sure that's not important to you at the moment. As you said, I think a borderline personality disorder narcissist wants somebody to wait on them hand and foot, and act like they're a queen or a king, and really they're no better than anybody else, really insecure. Well, and what's true about people with BPD, and what's true about people with narcissistic personality disorder, number one, they're not the same things. Number two, in both categories, they're extremely insecure. Even the most overt, grandiose narcissist. Underneath that facade, which narcissists have, borderlines don't really have facades. Maybe an idealization, sort of, but that's not even what it's really about. But yeah, they're really terribly insecure. And people with BPD, I mean, narcissists don't have identity either, but they don't care. They have way more stronger, way stronger infantile narcissistic defenses. So and that's the difference with people with BPD. I mean, largely often, is they don't have as strong as defense mechanisms. They have strong ones and they are innocuous, and the way that they act out of those defense mechanisms is traumatizing and abusive to people. But they definitely go up and down, like overcompensatory thinking, maybe that they're better than they are, but mostly thinking the opposite. And with BPD really comes an inferiority complex. But they're all different, right? And it's all the core aspects of it can be manifested in many different ways. And John said, so insecure, it'll drive you nuts. Well, yes, there's that presentation. And they can be so needy. Like, I've had clients describe that when they just tried to go to work or they had to leave, the person would just grab their leg like a 3-year-old and be like, like needy or, and so insecure. And of course, the insecurity with a lot of people with BPD untreated is that, whenever you're not in their sight or it's not about them, then they're seeking identity through you unconsciously. So it's like they fear abandonment immediately. And then you said every time the relationship was going well, mine would sabotage the relationship by causing major drama. Yeah, and that is the fear of engulfment. They do that because things are going well. They don't know how to take that in. They don't trust that. Then they feel too close, and then they feel engulfed, and then they feel like you're controlling them, and then they create arguments or fights, or they might just walk away, or the quiet borderline withdraws, but the acting out borderline will create drama and pick fights because they don't know how to move in and move out with people. They just can't simply say, I think I need a little space right now, or just normal things. It's really easy for the rest of us to communicate. And so that's that approach avoidance conflict in action, unfortunately. One end or the other, constantly back and forth. Because at best, people with BPD and untreated, I mean, only disorganized attachment, which I don't think that's really attachment, because it's too disorganized to be attachment. If that makes any sense. Hey there, Lottie. Also, some people instinctively hide the things that are more well known about their disorder subconsciously, I think. Well, yeah, some people might be able to do that with BPD, or they could be a little more high functioning. But the key thing about borderline personality, especially when it's not, when it's untreated, is that everything gets exacerbated to the max, and they're trying to have an interpersonal relationship. It's just so triggering back to because they truly do see from an unconscious level everybody as either mom or dad, good parent or bad parent in the splitting. Or sometimes in the idealization, good parent never had. But they really are relating to everybody around them at one level or another. Interesting notification popped up there. Anyway, they're really relating one way or another to one degree or another, almost always, even in idealization, but more so in devaluation, as if, oh, this isn't going to go away unless I make it. You're a parent. And this is just something that people might not realize is happening, but you're the one getting yelled at, screamed at, blamed, abused, traumatized, victimized, but you're not the one they're really yelling at. That's the extra crazy of it all. And they don't know that. So, but they need to get in therapy and learn that. Hey there, Sitai, if I'm saying that right. How do borderlines balance between fear of abandonment and fear of engulfment? They don't. They don't. They don't have any middle. They don't understand what's going on. If untreated, they have no idea. It's unconscious. They don't balance it. They can't balance it. It goes from one to the other to the other. Trigger here. Oop, back to so triggered abandonment. Oh, too far away from you now. Need you. Oh, okay. Move in closer. Oh, too close now. Feel engulfed. Push away. It's the push pull of it all. They don't manage it at all unless until significant treatment. Heather, my ex would become withdrawn, and then I'd hear I'm needy and sensitive when I would bring up the behaviors to him. It was so hurtful. I know, because it's so projective on their part, and they don't take any responsibility, especially untreated. They don't know why they feel what they feel, but the bottom line is that's why they need treatment. And so when they don't, when they withdraw, or when you would withdraw, rising for him would be the fear of abandonment. And then, he would say, "Oh, you're needy and sensitive," because that's how he was feeling. And they project it out, right? But it is hurtful because if you're not aware of all that, you really take that in. That's victim shaming and victim blaming in a projective identification way that people with BPD do so often in relationships, unfortunately. And the key thing too is, with borderline personality, there's a real awareness, there's no self, but there's a lack of, awareness, or quote self awareness. There's a real deficit there. And it's like the way for people with BPD to know that they need help and treatment is to gain some insight and awareness. But that's the very thing that's really hard for them to do. So much is going on from repetition compulsion cycles from childhood unconsciously, and they don't have a clue how they're impacting you. That's the other really awful part. They don't even recognize how you're feeling and what's happening to you because they're all about them. And not in an overly blown narcissistic way, but because they don't understand what they're feeling. And even though I explain it, it doesn't justify the way they treat people. And Keith, you said that Wi-Fi had to have that Wi-Fi had to have a breast augmentation, then a tummy tuck when she wanted to have a rear end, and then she wanted to have a rear end lift. Oh my God. Body dysmorphia on steroids, right? And she had wrestling put in her face, so she was turning into a complete Barbie doll. Or she's had something put in her face, yeah. Well, man, Restylane, yes, that's what I thought you meant, but I couldn't think of the word. Face filler, yes, I do know what you mean. So she was a plastic surgery addict. Yes, this is happening for so many with BPD. And it's body dysmorphia, and it's lack of identity. It's a whole lot of things. But I don't know. Like, I'm so sorry to hear that. But like, maybe you don't care now. I don't know. But that would be hard to be living with because that's extreme focus on self. And the other part of that is I've seen this like in famous people, right? There's some famous people out there. They were quite fine, beautiful, etc. And then they go and do that to themselves, and they just look abjectly horrible. I don't understand, but they don't. It is a body dysmorphia because it's like the anorexic who looks in the mirror and thinks they're fat when they're obviously not. But that's distorted perceptions like crazy there. Heather, it's so true. Whenever I told him he was hurting me, he would say he couldn't hear it anymore. He didn't want to deal with the blame. Well, and I mean, when you're telling somebody that they're hurting you, you're not really exactly blaming them. If you're telling them that you feel hurt or you're being hurt, so again, he was projecting out what he likely would do to you, which is victim blame and victim shame. Wow. Michael, after she dumped me, she accused of stuff that she did. Yeah, that's projection. Absolutely. And they do that all the time. And I guess some of what they end up feeling, and they're triggered by, and all the emotional dysregulation dissociatively brings into the here and now their past again. And whether they're aware of any of that or not, it just strengthens what they went through as kids, which is not an excuse for anything, but strengthens this idea of bad parent, horrible parent, or maybe they really had, like I had horrible parents. But I recognized going forward that, I couldn't blame them forever, and I had a life to live, and I needed to get help. But so many people with BPD, and especially these days, man, more treatment out there than ever before, and less, I don't know what the stats are, but there's just a myriad of people that all you people have been with, that we're talking about, that my videos are aimed at people who've been with all these people that aren't all people with BPD, but they're the ones that just never get it. And or, like even if they're comorbid with NPD or not, they never get it and they don't want treatment. I just keep torturing people, essentially. Um, See, Ty, how common is it for psychotherapists to abandon, stop treating borderlines if the DBT therapy is not going well? Well, first of all, um, don't assume they're on DBT therapy. DBT therapy is really effective. It's a great place to start. It is not a recovery modality, to my understanding, anyways. Maybe I'm wrong, but nobody's ever said I was wrong. Um, I know they've incorporated more into it, but DBT is a different brand of therapy. So there are individual one-on-ones, but all they talk about are the skills, which are important to learn. So it's not the same as other psychotherapies where people are actually in a more relational dynamic, if I can put it that way. But to the rest of your question, how common is it for psychotherapists to abandon? Well, first of all, some are so bad they might abandon someone with BPD, but usually that's not the case. But the person with BPD could feel abandoned. But the stopping treating of people with BPD, um, whether it's DBT or not, usually in a DBT program, people get to just keep going on, whether they're getting it or working it or not. But in other modalities of treatment, there are just some people that even if they keep coming back for sessions, nothing is getting anywhere. And not all with BPD, but some can be. I don't have any clients like this right now at all with BPD. They're all working really hard and they're all really getting better right now. And sometimes I'll have someone with BPD that I'm working with that usually they go away. Usually they just they leave the process. They quit. But if they don't, some of them are at ground zero and they're so abusive. And then if you can't talk to them about the abuse, there's nothing happening there that can help anybody, right? And so I have a pretty high threshold for abuse in with clients in a sense. Um, if we can work on talking about it, if we can explore it, because I don't expect people with BP to be able to stop everything on a dime. But if they're not doing any work and that keeps happening, I think a lot of a lot of therapists have to stop working with some people with BPD. And I think what helps me in a way to kind of bridge some of those things that may be more difficult for some others, I don't know, working with people with BPD, is I can use of self. So when I see somebody with BPD really, you know, not knowing what's happening for them and whatever their mood state, or whatever's going on, I can sometimes say, I remember when I blah, 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 because then they're not getting confronted with something. And I've had lots of clients respond well to that because they're like, oh, wait a minute. I can relate to that or kind of get what you're saying. And it sort of starts to open doors. But um, it's not a simple process. But like some people with BPD, I just want to say they're not all the same. I have many clients that come who are very self-aware and maybe they've had therapy before, but whatever it is, they really understand themselves. And or maybe it's been they watched a bunch of videos and they've watched a bunch of mine. And anybody who's got BPD and can watch a bunch of mine is probably looking to learn and grow versus just fight back at me and tell me I'm wrong and I got it all upside down, which I hear about sometimes too. I don't know what your question mark is referring to, Michael, so I really can't help you with a question mark. Um, and is that Etty? I'm not sure. Mine is hoovering me for 10 years now. Every time she breaks up from someone, she returns to me and keeps saying, I am her only true love. It seems like she can't be alone. Oh, it was a typo. Okay, Michael, because I'm like, I don't know. I can't answer a question mark. No worries. Well, yeah, I mean, so your ex has been hoovering you for 10 years, but you've been allowing that for 10 years. That might be a good question to ask yourself. How come? Just saying, not judging. And the other thing is, often, not all, but some people with BPD will hoover back over a period, not usually that long, but they will hoover back over a period of time every time the next relationship doesn't work out. Because what that really is about, in a deeper understanding way that doesn't matter to people's lives but might help you to understand, you have remained her object other, the object constancy, or the object of constancy to her, even though she's been with all these other people. So it sounds like she's never been able to put the object constancy onto somebody else. And therefore she would say, because you're her one true love. No, you're the one constancy object still that for her feels somewhat secure in what object constancy and somebody representing that means, which nobody wants to be in that position. So, but I think you really need to ask yourself, or if you choose to, why are you still in contact with this person? And 10 years worth of hearing this stuff, please don't ever believe that you're her one true love, because borderlines untreated don't know how to love. They don't feel loved. They don't take in your love. They don't give love. They don't attach. And so, like, let me just reiterate again, it's not true that they split you to valuation and then get rid of you because they felt your love and oh my God. No, they don't even get there. Keith, do you feel, sorry, I put words in there, I don't know. Do you feel that if you have kids with the BPD, they wait for the kid to graduate high school and then they go on their seeing of the sowing of the wild oats phase? That's when they kind of go off track. Well, that could be partially true for some people with BPD, and maybe some people with BPD, they're not all the same. So some can be pretty adequate or good mothers, and that might be the case. Hard to say, but it's possible for sure. Hey there, Ollie. Long time no see. Yeah, you just said the same thing. Uh, OMG, AJ. Long time no see. Yeah. Wonder what you've been up to. I mean, you don't have to say, but like, I hope things are going well for you. See, Ty. Why do many websites aimed at people living with borderlines recommend setting boundaries, given that BPDs don't respect and understand boundaries anyway? Well, yeah, that seems rather counterintuitive, doesn't it? But the point is that when you start to set boundaries that you do need to set, that will become usually like a war zone and a roller coaster of chaos and all those circular conversations of Jade where you end up justifying, arguing, defending, and explaining because they're like, hey, like, what's up with this boundary? But people need boundaries. So that's probably why those websites say that. But they don't really address the reality of how, with some people with BPD, they don't work. They just don't work. But people who are still with somebody with BPD have to start implementing boundaries, no matter the response of the person with BPD. But so really the boundaries are for yourself. They're not going to change the person with BPD or change their behavior or get them to respect you. So it's important for people to realize you can't set a boundary that's going to change the borderline, but you need to set boundaries for yourself. But because they often don't respect boundaries and they can up the ante and get more abusive around boundaries, this is why a lot of people have to, if they're not ghosted, they have to leave and take care of themselves. Well, everybody's saying hi to each other. That's cool. I'm just thinking, I don't know what else I should say here. And maybe the reality of, for people with codependency, that when you are victimized, and you are victimized by these people, and then you want to get on a healing and recovery journey so that you don't remain in a victim mindset, in a victim kind of world of hurt. And with the victim blaming and the victim shaming, I don't like to use the word triggers codependence, but in essence it is similar, because people can get triggered in general. It's not just people with BPD, but they get triggered almost constantly if they're untreated. But the thing is, so when like people with codependency, when they get blamed and shamed and you're being victimized, you can definitely then end up feeling really worse about yourself and taking that on board as if it defines you, because it taps into that. And still, some people with codependency, it's in their unconscious, the wounded inner child, and how much this person with BPD might be somewhat like a parent in one way or another. Not always like to the nines, but so when they're blaming and shaming, it hits codependence often in two places, like the here and now and the wounded inner child. So it can be a double wound in that way. It's a double blow. And then sometimes people wonder why they're so overly reactive. Not all codependents are, but many are. And that happens because people in these relationships with untreated people with BPD are way over limits and boundaries, whether you have any really or not, whether you're aware of what they are or not. They're what people with codependency need to learn that they do need. And when you're over all those limits and boundaries, sometimes, I've worked with lots of clients over the last 30 years where they've done things that they can't believe they did. That, yeah, they were abusive, but they were in reaction, but that doesn't excuse it either. So if you don't have the boundaries and or you're over all the boundaries that would be healthy for you to have, and you're way beyond your limits, this is when people with codependency get more and more hurt, more and more victimized, losing more and more self, and hurting more and more. And because it's not just what the borderline is saying to you as an adult, it's also hitting your inner child. Oh, there's been a lot that's happened, you said, Ellie. You ended up going out with your mom 2 weeks ago. Well, yeah, big mistake, but hey, because I lost my wallet and we got into a huge fight. Well, I'm sorry that you lost your wallet. I hope you found it. He said, but I've learned to stick to my boundaries and I'm moving pretty soon. Yeah, that's great. So I've been still been doing good in that aspect and just been focusing on my goal, which is moving. Well, yeah, good for you. And there are circumstances and things that present themselves, like with a narcissistic parent, where you kind of maybe because of the stress of the moment, you forget, that like asking them for help's like flushing your head down the toilet, right? So it happens. But then, like you said, it so often ends up in a huge fight, unfortunately. Um, yeah. But I think, it'd be really interesting to see how you're doing when you're out of there. I think it's going to help you immensely and help whatever healing you might feel you still need to do. It'll help that process immensely. So, and the key thing for people with codependency too is not to deny the victimization or the way that you've been victim blamed and shamed and then some, but to really get into a healing recovery journey so that you don't stay in that place, because very painful. And then, like I was just saying before, it can intersect with something that happened in your childhood that you have a wounded inner child. And for a lot of people with codependency who get into a relationship with a borderline or a narcissist or more than one, it's a replication because many people with codependency have a cluster B parent, not all. So there's that too, and it's like I've said it before, man sees woman, woman sees man sees man, woman sees woman, whoever you're attracted to. And on an adult level, okay, what's happening there is good. But on an inner child level, yours and theirs, it's like, they're like familiar. It's like, yeah, go there. Because the hope is in the unconscious, in the wounded inner child or the lost inner child in the case of people with BPD untreated, the hope is reparation. Oh, here comes mom or here comes dad. But that all happens unconsciously and maybe not to the same degree, but for people with BPD and for the codependent, when all the other attraction is happening in your adult self. But this is what goes on unconsciously in the wounded inner child. And it's not fun, right? It's, hey there, Nancy. Yes, borderlines don't respect boundaries. When you set boundaries, they push even further. and lash out at you. They punish you. They often can. And of course, the recipe and the remedy for that is get out. Don't be with them. Don't stick around, because some people, but I guess we're here talking about pretty much untreated people with BPD. But when some people start getting into treatment stuff, they'll learn at least a little bit how to tolerate and understand about somebody else's boundaries when they start realizing that they need to learn something about boundaries. But yeah, in the idealization, they merge with you. They're seeking identity through you. So it's not the same as a narcissist, but they don't see you like an extension of themselves. They more see themselves as you. And there's no ego boundary for people with BPD between self and other because they're lacking the self. Sitai, is it a good strategy for someone with BPD, undiagnosed, to stay single and avoid relationships altogether? It is, and there are many people with BPD who were untreated, but like I've worked with over the years and working with now, that they are, either working on getting, because some people with BPD are in relationships with another person with BPD, not just narcissists or codependents or just people. But yeah, I have a lot of clients that will realize that and will, I'll gently suggest to them and they'll follow that suggestion because then they can work on their own healing and recovery as people with codependency need to do in their own right and move forward. So it is an excellent strategy when people have enough awareness with BPD to say, hey, I can't kind of handle relationships. And many with BPD will realize at a certain point in their life, not the untreated ones who may never change, but many will realize, like, I don't want to hurt anybody anymore because they'll understand they're hurting people. Because not all people with BPD are so blind to what's happening to others, but a lot of untreated people with BPD definitely are. And Heather, I booked a session with you the other day. I'm really looking forward to working on my inner child. Oh, excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to working with you too. And I'm, so busy, but like I will get you in. And I think like I don't really work weekends, but I mean, I've been doing a few videos. I got to do a few more and get them ready so I can put them up through the week because I don't have time usually during the day, like Monday to Friday. I'm just so many clients. But I will be contacting people likely tomorrow. Sometime tomorrow afternoon, I'll take an hour or two and get everybody contacted. It's for the next 2 to 3 weeks, and then people coming along. I think there's about 8 or 10 people right now that just are brand new since last Monday or Tuesday. So I'll get scheduling everybody, and then I have to reschedule with regular ongoing clients too. But I'll do that tomorrow, so you'll hear from me. And I apologize that you haven't heard so far, but hopefully people understand. And I'm doing my best to contact people within 48 to 72 hours after purchasing a session to actually schedule and book. So, and since I decided to take weekends off, it's making the week really busier, and then things are packed. So, and right now I'm doing the live stream, and I did some videos today, like I said. But tomorrow, other than scheduling, I'm not going to do anything to do with work unless I show up to do a live stream. You never know, which isn't exactly work like client work. I think this thing just there was okay. Wait, I gotta scroll up. Can you imagine if this thing moved faster? I'd be like so out of it. Peanut Q Public. What Sitai asked. Okay, well, I think I answered that as best I could. So hopefully you feel like that was a little bit helpful at the very least. I love your name, by the way, Peanut Q Public. That's neat. Michael, a boundary is a standard for them and for you. You have to be able to walk away if they break them. Absolutely, yes. Very well said. And that's something that so many people with codependency find themselves unable to do. But then some, not everybody with codependency is the same either. So it's really good to know, and or if you've been working with someone or you're in process, to learn that yeah, there's boundaries, and then there's some that are non-negotiable. And if they're not respected, it's time to go. Definitely. And Ali said, "You're so right. During this time, I have to be honest, I have been going back and forth with the emotions. I have noticed I've been getting triggered a lot lately, or triggered lately, so I've had to really work on that. Well, and even though you're looking forward to getting out of there, I mean, you might find once you're out of there, it'll be great, it'll be better, but then there's going to be some work to do too. So don't be surprised if even your freedom is a little triggering at first. Not entirely, but Nancy, I've gone through 6 weeks of BPD nightmare. I'm so sorry to hear that. It seems to be over right now, thank God. I do hope so. I'm afraid my BPD stalker will strike back again. I suspect he's comorbid BPD, NPD, or psychopathic. Well, if he's got BPD, here's the thing, right? This psychopathic stuff is nonsense. Because if they're really psychopathic, they need to be diagnosed as said, you know. So, but people have a lot of conjecture and a lot of their own ideas, and I'm not here to say, you're wrong. But I think when people start off saying someone's BPD and they're acting psychopathic, I'm like, well, wait a minute. Could be comorbidity BPD, NPD, might not be. You'd be surprised the limits of what BPD actually can present as, which is, and it can be stalking. It definitely can be. And if you haven't already involved the authorities, you should, because there are people out there with BPD only, and I'm not saying, I don't know the person, but it could be BPD only, and there are people that can't stop stalking unless until they're charged. Period. And then they'll still do it, and they'll get charged again, charged until they end up in jail. There are a smaller percentage of people with BPD that absolutely can have that kind of behavior, whether whether it's comorbid with NPD or not. But it's stalking is something that really psychopaths only do to prey if they're violent psychopaths. Psychopaths don't really engage in stalking in the sense of like long term or the way that people with BPD do. So I don't know why, in general, I'm not just saying this to you, Nancy, why people think that when BPD, when borderlines up the ante of their abusive behavior, that somehow they go up in categories in cluster B. Not necessarily at all. Because there's a wide range and there's a smaller percentage of people with BPD that can be very dangerous, very stocky, or worse. So, it's not the majority. But they're out there. Allie, I missed you, and being here, life has been so crazy lately. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. And did you say you missed me? Because I didn't go anywhere. I'm just saying. Anyway, Nancy, I've ignored him several times and blocked him, but he managed to send his flying monkeys and had the gall to have them contact my significant other directly. Well, and again, so ignoring and blocking, but you need to call the police. You need to document and report because it sounds like this one isn't going to stop on their own. And many of them don't. And then he said he contacted him the same day. He tried to sabotage my relationship with my significant other and my reputation. It was an extremely nasty, scary situation. Well, definitely it would be. And of course, I hope that you're looking at just not this person stalking and the contacting of your significant other. No, that those are boundary breaking, abusive things to do. But you have to take a little responsibility for that somebody else is affected, not by his behavior, but um. So anyway, hopefully document and call the police because it's the only way it's going to stop. And by the way, when they contacted your significant other, had you have documented and called the police prior, that would raise the bar on stalking activity exponentially. At least I don't know what the laws are where you are, but in Canada, if you contact someone else that that person knows or is in a relationship or related to, it ups the stalking and the harassment, criminal harassment, exponentially to like the point of where somebody could be charged if the police have known about this pattern prior. So if I were you, I wouldn't waste any more time in letting the police know about the pattern. Um, Peanut Q Public, you did answer it well. Sorry for the scroll. Oh no, that's okay. I'm glad it was helpful. Allie, I think I will definitely feel so much better once I'm out of here for sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a big stage in not only your life but also recovery. Nancy, yes, I'm actually planning to file a restraining order against him. He's in another state. I've read that it can be done for interstate cyberstalking cases. Well, yeah, and I mean, I don't know what goes on in the U.S. with the law because not exactly the same as here, but I do know Canada has extremely strong cyber stalking law. But yeah, definitely do that. And well, it's good to know he's not really close by, but still, his contact of your significant other is really up in the ante, and the police would really see that way. And of course, a restraining order is, you file it in the hope that then they have to get arrested, get arrested, because rarely does it ever stop them. Allie said, "Yes, I missed you." Oh, thank you. Thank you for your kind words. Nancy, my SO has already blocked him. Well, that's good. Yeah, definitely. Um, and the only thing about that is if you don't have him blocked, you can collect more evidence to get his butt put in jail. But that can be stressful too. So, and I mean, and for some people at BP that not only Hoover but do stalk, um, that's incredible victimization. And so I, don't know where I heard out there, but some people think that if you're with somebody at BP, like I said, that you can't be a victim, which is just absurd because people at BPD do really, really traumatize and victimize people. Not all people, but the untreated types for sure. And they don't take any responsibility, of course. And the other thing too that's really difficult for people to understand, to a degree, and not with every untreated borderline, they really don't know the impact they're having on you. Now, when it gets to stalking, etc., I wouldn't say that, but um, and Nancy, I do have the screenshots of the conversation between him and my SO, and between him and me, as well as his flying monkeys. I even feel some of my PTSD and anxiety coming back. Well, that's really understandable because it is very stressful, and I'm sorry to hear that. But I'm glad that you have that documentation because, yeah, that should help you get a restraining order. And yeah, so if he's not actually coming to your door, but you can still report it to the police. And yeah, it's important to get that restraining order for sure. And that's the thing. Um, people who've been with people with BPD can be even the stalking, yes, is very victimizing and abusive and stressful and beyond. And but so are the relationships. Like they are often abusive enough one way or another that people, with codependency and having some history of something that they're maybe not aware of in the past, but a lot of people develop PTSD, or I don't know that it's really accurate to say develop CPTSD from these relationships because there's still something missing there in the fact that CPTSD starts in childhood, which was said by Pete Walker based on the work of Judith Herman with no caveats or exceptions. So is it a CPTSD response in childhood to something, and then that is re-enlivened by a borderline or narcissist abuse after and the way they victimize? Hard to say, but the idea that it just comes out of the ether in adulthood, I don't find anywhere in my research yet where they say it starts anywhere but childhood. So that might be something that might at some point fuse with an understanding about some of the PTSD or CPTSD that can be associated with codependency and vice versa. I don't know. Hi there, Nancy G. How are you? Um, and Secura. Hi, AJ. Did not know who what. Sorry, did not know who what I was dealing with a BPD predator, and he cut contact after a fight, Now he's trying to turn it around that he was the victim when I sought closure. Well, yes, and of course, the one thing there that you might not have known is can't get closure from a borderline or a cluster B. It's not a good thing to seek after. You have to get your own closure and do your own healing. But definitely, people with BPD have the, untreated, have the victim identity, which is more than a victim mentality, and they'll victimize others and feel like the victim. And narcissists do that too, but so do people with BPD. And just once again, I want to clarify for people that people with BPD are and BPD and NPD are not the same thing. So there's similarities and overlaps, just like BPD and codependency aren't the same thing, but the similarities and overlaps. So, but I know that these narratives online have gone way beyond what I can try to say, because people think that, yeah, somebody with BPD is acting psychopathic. Well, that's not really accurate if they actually have BPD, but anyway, people's experience is what they experience, and however you describe it, absolutely your business. Um, so I'm really sorry that's happening to you, Sakura, but it's never really wise to try to see closure from them because it's just engagement, another engagement meaning, not being engaged, but it's another engagement, it's another contact, it's another opportunity for them to victim blame and victim shame you. And Nancy M said, thanks to that BPD guy, I even have to postpone my move to be with my SO. It was originally scheduled on the 5th. I even had to cancel my flight. I'll rebook it some other time. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I really am. And I'm sure that you're dealing with the choices that you made, right? That you couldn't know this was going to be like this, right? So I'm really sorry to hear you going through that. And yeah, when people get to stalking, I mean, it just the abuse goes up. Um, Nelson said, "Wow," to Sakura. That's almost exactly like my situation. I ended up having to finally go no contact by blocking my ex. Yeah, because they'll get into the victim blaming and shaming for sure, and they have a victim identity because they don't have an identity, and because they've been victimized in childhood, which doesn't excuse anything. I'm just saying. So they really have a victim identity, which is even a more specific way of putting it that means more, I think, than saying victim mentality. Because anybody who's been victimized can, for a while at a time, have a victim mentality. But people untreated with BPD have a victim identity. So, not that that's going to help anybody out, except for it is a big call to awaken to the awareness that for those who are still not sure, in on and off again, you really got to go. You really got to take care of yourself. Or in the case of the borderline that ghosts you and slams the door in your face, leave it closed. And of course, it's really difficult to do. And Nancy M, he told me not to move in with my SO. Many marry him. Oh yeah, sure. And have kids with him. Oh, that wouldn't be a nightmare, would it? Absolutely, yeah. That turned out to be a threat that he carried out. Yes, that sounds quite threatening. And he got his flying monkeys and significant other to believe his smear campaigns. Yeah, it's terrible. And then you said he even told his flying monkeys that I was the one with mental issues and BPD. Laugh out loud. Unbelievable. He painted me as an evil, despicable person. Yeah, well, there's the victim blaming and shaming again in their projective way that he ascribed to you what's true of him. So, and yeah, you got really a bad case there on your hands, like really severely. But it doesn't mean he goes up the ladder in cluster B necessarily, because there are some people, smaller percentage with BPD, that can be that abusive. But you keep saying flying monkeys like you're convinced he's a BPD, NPD, or a narcissist. That's okay. Bottom line is, doesn't matter what label fits him or doesn't fit him. What matters is, getting that restraining order, and really you should be calling the police every single time there's anything from him because he needs to be stopped. Oh, hey there, Wheels. Nice to see you again. I didn't think you were going to make it today. How are you? So yeah, I mean, victimization is really real. People need to realize that. And often for people with codependency, it can be an unconscious repetition compulsion of something that you felt victimized by in childhood. Whether the victimization would come up to the level of what's happening in a relationship with a cluster B or not, often when people are adults and have a wounded inner child with codependency, they don't, until and unless they do work on this, as I work with clients, they don't really realize that it was a really big deal what happened to them, whatever it was. Not the same for everybody. Because when you're a little kid, something can be hugely impacting. And then when you grow up and it's kind of like you push it out of your consciousness, but then there's these repetition cycles, right? Because codependent relating is in its own way unhealthy, as well as, I'm not comparing it to people with BPD, but it's another type of unhealthy relating. Um, Alina, hi AJ. Is it normal to feel unregulated after a breakup from a BPD ex? I feel I have trespassed my limits and my values. I even started acting crazy like my ex. Well, yes. So it's quote not really normal, but it's very common. But it's kind of normal situationally. And you said that you feel unregulated. Well, yeah, because if you identify with codependency, there's likely something happening deep in your unconscious in that wounded inner child that's making it even more difficult for you, as if it wouldn't have been difficult enough. And then when you said you felt you trespassed your limits, yes, definitely it sounds like you were over all your limits and boundaries, even if they weren't defined. And when people get into that overextended over limits and boundaries, there can be high reactivity that then people sometimes end up acting as if they have BPD, but it doesn't mean that you do. But that reactivity happens because you're way stressed to the point that you're way over limits and boundaries and not taking care of yourself. So, and if you get abusive in that situation, your abuse is not sanctionable, just like people with BPDs isn't. But it's not that that's who you are or that you're an abusive person, but it's because you went way over limits and boundaries. And so I hope that helps a little bit to understand, because it's really important for people to take responsibility for that reactivity, but then to seek help, you know, to get those boundaries in place and to back up and to be able to disconnect and go no contact and start your own healing and recovery. And Allie said, "Oh Lord, AJ, when you finally, I guess said something about Grey Rock, or someone escaped from the madness, my mother won't even bother with me most of the time, but she must be really bored because she started drama, um, with another person, and I'm just so glad I'm out of it. But sometimes people will come to me and talk about my mother, and I tell them, sorry, it's not my problem. Well, yeah, and you said I feel bad in a way, but I don't want to get dragged into any more BS. Well, see, Allie, that's still some of the codependency, right? Because you do not deserve to feel bad at all for other people who bother with your mother. That's not your responsibility. So hopefully you can think about that a little bit more. And Nancy M said he played his abandonment issues. Is CPTSD from years of abuse by his dark triad, or tetrad, you said. Um, yes, I know what that is, but actually it's malignant narcissist, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. I throw in sadistic personality, but it's not the official definition. And you said his dad and his BPDX. Well, I mean, I had a dark triad father, and I'm not behaving like that. So it's not an excuse, is it? So he was no doubt traumatized, but again, now he's responsible to grow the F up, get some treatment, and stop abusing everybody else. Terrible what some people do, really. It's just, ugh. So, but the official definition of the dark tetrad or triad is malignant narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism, which, of course, the APA doesn't put in the DSM, and they don't put in sadistic personality disorder. And what else is missing? Dark triad, sadistic personality, something else. Because I think the power center of the pseudoscience of American psychiatry has a lot of those dudes in it. I'm not saying every psychiatrist is like that. No, couldn't know that. That would be ridiculous. But power center, where all the worst ones go. Whatever the power center of anything is. Um, yeah, Allie, that's toxic guilt that you're feeling, and or could be enmeshed or partly with toxic shame. But, the fact that she's your mother, you can't help it, and you can start disowning that real soon. And other people that have to deal with her, it's like, yeah, and like as soon as they start to even like look your way, go, nope, sorry, what happens between you and her is your problem, not mine, and really have a firm boundary around that. Because you don't need to end up in, and you need to do some more work to not end up in toxic guilt responses. Because it's not your guilt, not your responsibility. Um, oh, you're really welcome, Allie. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, you're working your way through it, so you'll keep learning. Um, and you're trying to cut all the strings. Yes, it takes time. It's a process. And Nancy said he tried to convince me that he's committed to getting help. Oh, sure, yeah. He said he's been going to therapy, but he definitely hasn't changed. Well, if he's going to therapy, it ain't working, eh? Like, seriously. Not that you'd see immediate change, but you'd think there'd be at least reduction in stalking. So whether or not he's going to therapy, like lots of them go to therapy, but they don't go to therapists who specialize in this stuff, and they don't ever talk about stuff. So they can handcuff a therapist really easily as well. But he's definitely not doing the work, even if he's going somewhere. And Allie said, "Oh my God, wow! I never even thought about that before. Toxic shame, yeah, and toxic guilt as well. Um, how do you deal with that? Well, whatever you feel might be left over in your BPD recovery, important to complete that process, and also the codependency. It's about, it's hard to say to you, Allie, that you have inner child work to still do because you're not a child anymore. And you're an adult, but you're closer to your adolescence than older people. But yeah, it's the wounded inner child in you too. And so you need to do more healing on the codependency front as well. And that wounded inner child is still carrying the toxic shame and the toxic guilt that was put on you probably a million times over by your narcissistic mother when you were very young, even, and continued on up until now. But it's not your responsibility. And when you were a little kid, you probably didn't know that. Because when kids are wounded by, especially, well, borderline or narc parent, there's no way they can understand. So that shame gets taken on as I am bad. And like it is my fault. And that is also where the seeds of codependency can start because that's not true. But children have no way to know that, right? Or process that. Um, yeah, definitely, Allie. You're very welcome. You need to look at those childhood wounds too. See, Ty, I know that one has to have 5 out of 9 symptoms, yeah, or so-called human traits, right? Yeah, to be diagnosed with BPD. Can a person who shows fewer than 5 symptoms, yeah, subclinical technically, be denied any treatment, even if these symptoms are strong? Um, no, not necessarily, but yes, like yes and no. Yes, if they need a referral with a diagnosis. No, to probably they'd have to seek private help as opposed to maybe other avenues. So, and then it depends where they live and what, so yes and no is the answer. Can happen to people. But even 4 strong traits or symptoms, see, this is the arbitrary nature of what's wrong with American pseudoscience of psychiatry that permeates North America, right? If you got 4 strong traits and you show up in the shrink's office and how do they count this crap? Like, no, go away. You're fine. Well, they're not fine, but they don't get the diagnosis. Oh, have one more trait as somebody deems or whatever. Bingo. It's nonsense. It's ridiculous. And now they're moving really more. They're not using the cluster axis stuff as much as the 5 factor model of personality and that kind of thing. So with the 5 factor model, you can trap anybody into any personality diagnosis you might feel like if you're a shrink and you're in that kind of a mood that day. So there's a lot wrong with it. But you know, if somebody presents with 4 really strong traits, I don't like using the word traits because they're human traits, but 4 really strong obviously BPD things or that indicate probably a diagnosis should be made because it's so arbitrary to go, well, if I only count the 4, can't help you. And then, of course, hey, Jake, lay down and quit that. Jake, with people with quiet BPD, psychiatrists miss it all day long. Now they can't tell the difference, some of them, a lot of them, between bipolar and BPD. I don't know what's going on with this stuff. It just doesn't seem like they're that stupid, but maybe they are. I don't know. Some of them. And the other thing is what was the other thing? Yeah, important for me to just say here, that it used to be a gender bias. Women, like I got labeled with BPD, not diagnosed because I was a female. And yeah, sure, trauma based response. I'm not trying to lighten it. I just never had full blown BPD. Kind of always knew that. Revisionist history now, so it doesn't matter. But the point is, um, women used to just get dumped. Like just if you went anywhere near a shrink or they had reason to even like know you existed, women would just get dumped in the category of BPD. Because if they couldn't figure out that it's anything else, it's got to be that. And men would get dumped in NPD. But it's not like that today. It's very much not like that as much. And the numbers between the genders for either diagnosis are approaching 50-50. So it's not true that there aren't a lot of men with BPD, and it's not true that there aren't a lot of women with NPD. So just to clarify that too, because a lot of misinformation out there on that. Um, and Nancy said the reason I think he may be comorbid NPD is his scheming, plotting, and his deep interest in PUA, pickup artists, tricks to seduce and victimize women. PUA techniques are very much narcissistic. Well, you may be really right. I don't even know. I haven't heard that term before. Yeah, well, I'm glad you now know why you've been feeling so lousy, Allie, because then you'll be able to do something about it, right? You'll know, like, hey, don't hang on to the toxic guilt and shame, and find your way through working that through. And you said you do know that your mother isn't right. I've done so much therapy on this, and I still struggle with it. When people try to drag me into it again, I'll continue to put my foot down. Yeah, well, it's about boundaries, and it's really important. And then you said, once again, you pointed out exactly what I've been dealing with. Don't want to get down that rabbit hole again. Well, and people need to keep learning, and the more you know, then the more you know exactly what you need to work on, and the more you do that, and with somebody is the best way to do it, then the more you know, the more you can do better. And that's the exciting thing that can come from all of this other nonsense and pain and victimization. And so what's important for people is to look at where they're at too. If you're still being actively victimized, obviously it's going to be hard not to feel like a victim because you are being victimized. But after that's passed, and in many people's cases it has, but not everybody's, not even everybody here, then it's really time to get into healing and recovery. So from the relationship, and usually for codependency for most people, because you really need to get out of that victim role as soon as you can, right? To empower yourself, to be moving forward. And, I mean, like I say it quickly, but it's a process too, and it takes time. It's hard work, but rewarding work. Wheels, I'm doing all right, AJ. Things have been pretty stressful, but I've been working on some things and trying to be patient. Well, that's good that you still have the ability to try to be patient. On the bright side, hockey practice has started again, and that always helps. Well, yeah, that's cool, but I just can't wait for the day you say you're out of there. But yeah, I mean that's great because something that you can do that you enjoy. That's really important. Something to look forward to because you're dealing with so much stress and abuse. Um, and Allie said, "You're so correct. It's going to be a struggle, and I'm here, but I'll get there." Oh, while you're there, yeah, but you will. Yeah, you will get there. Definitely, you will. And healing and recovery journeys from when you're the child and then adult child of a narcissist, like you and Wheels are. I was. It's a process, and it takes time. And then whether dealing with BPD and codependency or dealing with codependency, they're not short-term processes. It's very painful and very complicated and complex. It's not as simple as, oh, just 12 step your way out of it. No, it doesn't work like that. So some people might find that helpful and supportive along the way, but therapy is really the answer for sure. And working with someone who knows what they're talking about too, because I've had a few people commenting on the channel recently that they have therapists that don't seem to know what they're doing, and I'm getting questions about what are they supposed to tell their therapist to help them with it. I'm like, they really should change therapists. I went to a therapist years ago that I'd seen years prior, and just had nothing to do with BPD. I mean, that all was over in my life a long time ago. But I went because when I knew I needed to work more on codependency. And I walked in her office. I think I've told this before. So if you've heard it before, I'm sorry. I walked into her office and I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" Because I'd seen her years prior. Like when I had the quote BPD, I was labeled with, and the CPTSD, that it was really more or less basically, but who knew back then? And so she's like, so I hadn't seen her in years, and was sort of like a mini catch up, and that was back in like 1999, 98, 99. And I said to her, she's so, "Hey, how you doing? How you doing? Good to see you again." Yeah, yeah, blah blah blah, and all that. And then she said, "So yeah, what's up? What do you want to talk about? Why are you here?" And I said, "Well, I got to deal with codependency because it was after a relationship breakup that was not like an unhealthy relationship or any horror story, but I just realized at that point that yeah, I had some more work to do on the codependency front." And she looked at me and she said, "Codependency? What do you mean by that?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? What do I mean by codependency?" She goes, "I don't believe in codependency." And I sat there for maybe a minute or two and I went, "Oh, well, it was nice seeing you again." And I got up and I left. And yeah, it was an appointment in an agency and I didn't have to pay for it. But even if I had paid, I just got up and left. Because if you are working with a therapist out there, anybody that might see this later, and they don't know what codependency is, they don't understand what it truly is, trauma response to varying degrees, like BPD is a trauma response, like everything that's got a label is to one degree or another a freaking trauma response. Doesn't matter, people got to call it mental illness and all this crazy stuff too, because I guess a lot of people refer to codependency as a freaking disease. And then there's, the guy that everybody knows that wrote the book with the magnets and everything that says it's self-love deficit disorder. And he coined a phrase, I think, or maybe somebody did prior to him, pathological loneliness, which when I did that video, I don't want to use the word pathological loneliness, but extreme loneliness in a context of codependency that people have to deal with often. And that's what that's what came up for me after that relationship broke up in 1998, was just, yeah, it was just like, hey, there's more work to do here on this, like, codependency. And it was, yeah, deeply sort of missing the person. But it wasn't a trauma bond or a bad relationship, just really missing the person and then being really uncomfortable myself about that. Because remember, codependency is a dysfunctional relationship to and with self as well as everything else. And so that's when I really got serious about getting on the path to creating that healthy relationship, which I had a healthier one by then, but through the codependent lens, a healthier relationship to and with myself. And that added to better boundaries. And hey, even when we get a lot of healing recovery work done, we're still works in process. We're still going to be growing, right? The hope is. um and Oh, Ali said you've helped me so much, AJ, and I appreciate every advice you've given me. I always try to write down small things you say. Well, I'm just glad to be helpful. And let's uplift each other. AJ, I'm 4 months no contact. Well, congratulations on that. And my ex-fiance is still trying to reach out to me. Sorry to hear that. Daily and hoover me back. I refuse, but why? Why is she so adamant about hoovering me? Well, because they don't know what else to do with themselves, for one generalized answer. And the other thing is, again, it goes to your responsibility. How come she can still hoover you? So that's what you really need to look at and answer, because that's what you have control over. You don't have control over why she's doing it, and she may never stop doing it. Because you're her object of constancy, and that is like her quote sort of safety go to back to, and you don't want to be that. So I really gently with compassion say to you, and no judgment, why does she still have the ability to hoover you? Because you need to cut off. You said you were no contact for 4 months, so how is she doing this? Because you need to do something about however she's doing that. Yeah, definitely. And maybe I don't know. Does she show up in front of your face? Does she show up wherever you? But the thing is, if that's the case, and it's unwanted contact, you too can call the police and you can get a restraining order on this person. And that's what it might take for them to stop doing what they're doing. Hey, Robert. I had a clinician who didn't believe in codependency, like I just said. Um, Me too. And her supervisor thought NPD was rare. I felt on trial. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And then what did you do? Because, like, I walked out of the office as soon as she said, "What do you mean by codependency? I don't believe in codependency." I'm like, "Well, then you're not the person I want to talk to," even though I knew her and I respected her and it would have been comfortable to talk to somebody I talked to in the past way. But, no, I'm really sorry to hear that happen to you, because that is your red flag in a therapist to go find another one. Because if they don't know what, and for her supervisor to go, NPD is rare, and you feel on trial, I hope you left then. I hope you went elsewhere. I don't know if you want to share that or not, but nobody seeking help should ever feel on trial. I'm sorry that happened to you. See, Ty, can borderlines hide their symptoms from others in a romantic relationship for more than a year? Typically, generally, not entirely. But the quiet borderline, sometimes people don't catch on. People don't really know what's going on. And it depends on whether they're really codependent or not. Because with my late ex, I have a partner, I can't say, I get mixed up in the words. But when I was with that quiet BPD who took her life in December 27, 2018, I'm not looking forward to the 2-year anniversary. It's still not difficult at times, in the grieving and sort of like healing process from that. But I didn't know she had quiet BPD, and why? Because not afterwards, it was like, oh my God, everything flooded me. It's like, oh, this, that, 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 that. But I didn't know at the time because it was not responding to her codependently. So when she would change plans, back out at the last minute, not contact me for a few days or whatever, I didn't think anything of it because I was busy. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think they can really hide quiet BPDs, maybe for longer. But the thing that's going to happen is maybe what they're not hiding well isn't but a little bit of a symptom or a little bit of a hint. And people don't always pick up on it until it gets a lot more obvious. So I think that's what might happen sometimes when people are in relationships longer And then all of a sudden more shows up, or they become aware of more. Oh, whoops, I'm scrolling the wrong window. This thing, I don't know. Um, and Nancy said, "Thank you so much, AJ. I now know what to do. I've learned a few more things from you tonight." Well, I'm glad, Nancy. Really glad to be helpful, and really hope you can work on that so that you can, that person deserves to be in jail. You don't deserve that abuse. And stalking is, somebody victimizing you on steroids. So I really hope that you're able to take care of that legally, and that person gets shut down, even if they have to have their butt thrown in jail for years. Um, let's uplift each other. After so many discards, after her cheating, I finally left. It's like I'm trying to make sense of why she is so desperately trying to hoover me back. Every day, 4 months later, I want to heal. Well, trying to make sense out of why she's hoovering you is not the appropriate focus for you to be able to heal. And while she's hoovering you every day, that's also going to impede your healing and recovery process. So again, you don't have to tell me, but be aware of yourself. What is the vehicle of the hoovering? If you're no contact, close it, shut it down. If it's still something online, or she's showing up where you work, or she's showing up in general where you are, that's not okay. Call the police and report that. She's more than hoovering. She's becoming stalking. So you need to first ask yourself, what's the avenue that she gets to do this to you with? And you got to stop that. You got to cut that off. And if she's showing up in person and that's the avenue, and you're no contact, then you have to start calling the police. You have to start documenting so they can, and get a restraining order so they can charge her and her butt goes to jail. And you can't be feeling sorry for them. They need to get the consequences of their actions to have any chance to be able to, well, stop, number one, and maybe get more therapy or remanded to therapy and get some help. In the meantime, though, trying to make sense out of why she's hoovering you is not, when I say right focus, I don't mean right wrong. It's not the helpful focus, because you need to focus on cutting off however she's hoovering you. And then, because you're not going to be able to get much healing done if you're hearing from this person or seeing them or however they're hoovering you every single day. But never mind why, just make sure you stop it. Whatever that avenue of contact is, or whether you have to involve the police, that's where your focus needs to be. For you, on you, about you, and your boundaries, so you can heal. Never mind why the hell she's doing it. Who cares? Obviously, she's out of control, and there could be a myriad of reasons, but don't let that doubt creep in your head that somehow, don't feel guilty about it, don't feel responsible about it. Cut off however she's contacting you, and stop focusing on, these are my advice, I'm not telling you like, hey, do this, but stop focusing on why she's doing it, because that's just going to keep you spinning around, and you got to stop it from happening so you don't keep spinning around about why she's doing it. But more to the point, even while she might still be doing it till you can stop it, or whatever the way she's doing it is, you need to focus on yourself. You need to focus on your own boundaries. You need to not worry about why she's doing what she's doing, because it ain't going to make any sense anyway. Whoops. What just happened there? Scrolling is my enemy. Nancy, as you already know, this is not my first cluster B rodeo. Yeah, I do know. I remember. But there's so much to learn about cluster Bs. Not all of them are alike. No, that's very true. They're not all alike at all. And so there's some common core patterns here and there, but not for every single individual. Car Girl, I do the same thing. I have a notebook with me whenever I watch one of your videos, AJ. Well, I'm glad it's helpful, and if people take notes and then you can journal and you can explore things, that's wonderful. Wheels, yeah, I'm not sure if I told you this, but I managed to get one of my IT certifications recently, and I'm looking for a job as a technician now, I think it will make things easier. Well, excellent. Way to go. That's fantastic. Congratulations. And I hope you find a job real soon. And Robert, then the supervisor informed me I had light agoraphobia, but really derisive. That was my last day of therapy. Well, I mean, I hope if you ever feel you need therapy again, you could trust somebody else, but I'm glad that you didn't go back there. That just sounds ridiculous. And even if you did have any agoraphobia or something, were they trying to tell you that as a way of not dealing with what you were actually saying that they didn't want to hear or were not educated enough to hear? That's terrible. Um, let's uplift each other. Email AJ. She writes messages in the subject line. Thank you for your advice. You're absolutely right. Well, dump the email. Get what you need to save. Get the documentation of contact in case she starts in person, if that's possible, and save what you need. Put it in a file you don't look at, and dump the email. Just create a new email, and then tell your friends or whomever. It's not worth it. Yeah. So you see, when people say they're no contact, well, you're not absolutely no contact if they can contact you by email. It's like for other people, you're not absolutely no contact if they're still on your Instagram or whatever else of a plethora of things are out there. So yeah, focus on you, get rid of that email, and then you're gonna find that you can, and maybe there's been something inside of you can examine for yourself, that you've been not really wanting to make that final turn to the total no contact of super focusing on you, and really it's got to be about you. Because that's hard for people, right? Depending what you have to deal with and heal from the relationship, and if there's codependency there too, and what that healing recovery journey is about. But yeah, I really hope you'll do that like right now for yourself because you deserve that. And Robert, when they questioned me, I started defending myself and explaining. Well, and that's a natural response. And obviously, with some codependency, it's a very natural response. Um, she was dismissive and later passed me to her supervisor while she left to private practice. Wow, there's a mess of a therapist, and not a, supervisors, depending, agencies or whatever. Some of them are as bonkers as a therapist. I mean, because not everybody. I'm just saying it happens, and I'm sorry it happened to you. It happens to so many people. Um. Okay, hang on. I was in the right place, and then all of a sudden, no. um. Yeah, let me see. No, it doesn't matter how, like Ali said, it doesn't matter how long you try to make sense out of a borderline or narcissist. Um, and you can understand a lot. And I don't mean anything in an arrogant way with the videos and maybe a little bit of a style change in some of my videos, but I'm going to be the uber empowered person that I am and come hell or high water and whatever else. So I don't care about that. And I'm going to speak, well, I've been speaking pretty freely, but I'm going to be speaking even more freely because I humbly say I know what I'm talking about, and therefore it's important to do so. But I said that because why was that? Yeah, because when I say that you're never going to make sense out of them, or for people, even if they've had BPD, if you're dealing with a narcissist, or if you're codependent and you've never had either, then you can understand a lot intellectually, but you're not really going to make sense out of it at the end of the day because you haven't been in it, like as in it wasn't in you. And so to understand to a certain point, I get that people really need that to heal. But then people get beyond that point and it's just not appropriate or healthy focus anymore. And then, there's a lot of different feelings and difficulties that comes with putting that focus squarely on yourself and your own healing and recovery journey. Um, yeah, they're so not worth it. And Ellie, oh yeah, okay. And Okay, Robert. I had to squeeze out of a diagnosis from them. Oh my God. I kept wondering if I had social anxiety, but then he relented. I had a phobia. I wonder if they hated me using labels. It's hard to say why, Robert. They just don't sound very good, right? Because, I mean, I deal with clients all the time that use labels all the time up the yin yang, and so what? Maybe it's meaningful. Maybe they got something mixed up, but it doesn't mean I'm going to turn around and say, well, you got this, you got that, you got the other. It sounds like they got really defensive. Um, Counter transference there, I think, is what it was, Robert. And they were um, imposing themselves and their own stupidity on you. And that's really, unethical and amoral and not okay. I'm so sorry that happened again. SA, I've been dating, I keep meaning to change this text, a quiet BPD, and he just doesn't want to say anything positive about me, only negative stuff. Uh, is this constant evaluation? Basically, yes, it's like he's in a split, and it is negative, and it is devaluing, and he's staying there because that can happen too. Doesn't always mean they're going to ghost you next, etc. But he, yeah, well, he probably is really negative to begin with, and that's his lens for life. But he's not really seeing you. So, and even if he saw you, versus looking at identity through you, unconsciously, um, it could be a form of devaluation. It's definitely on that side. But it's also that he's got such a negative lens for everything that a lot of people with BPD don't know how to take a compliment or give a compliment. So a mixture of the two, likely. Um, Inquiring Cat, hey there. Very educating information. It has been helping a lot. I'm really glad. And then you said, is it possible to talk more about making friends with personal pain, or how do we stop viewing emotional pain as bad? Yeah, that's a really good question because for people with codependency, which you've indicated in your comments, which, I've really been enjoying your comments because you're new here and welcome. And if you haven't subscribed already, hit that bell, eh? But the thing is, yeah, so people do need to make friends with their pain. You do need to embrace it and lean into it. And then what helps with that is mindfulness practice and radical acceptance. So you want to detach from what is the core belief that a lot of people grow up with, that pain is bad and pleasure is great. That's binary dichotomous thinking. So you want to work at radical acceptance using mindfulness practice, and I have a couple of videos up about that and snippets of live streams you could check out that will help you. Because if we radically accept what is, and that means in the moment that you're in pain, and it's helpful when you understand why you're in pain, then the thing about that is to embrace that and radically accept it so that it's how you literally emotionally detach from your emotional pain somewhat, so that you can learn how to cope with it effectively, so that you can learn to manage it rather than it running you, so that you can dip in there and do the work and then pull yourself back out. So when you use radical acceptance practice, which takes time, the idea is to look at your pain neutrally. You're going to feel it in a different way, but to cope with it, it is what it is. It's not good and it's not bad. It just is what it is. We can be mindful to practicing that radical acceptance. That's a way to start embracing pain and leaning in. And the other thing about pain and the grief and all the other feelings that go with this pain in healing from a cluster B and or codependency is that once you start processing some of that pain and you really get some of it out, and sometimes that just means crying, and sometimes it's other methods and ways of doing it, then you start to become aware, as I remember from my recovery journey, that wow, the pain wasn't any fun, but then I cleared something out and I felt better for a little while until the next piece of pain comes. So it's really about getting into a neutral relationship where you're going to embrace your pain and lean into it, but it's not good and it's not bad. It just is what is. And it's okay. And then you need to find safety and coping around that, because the pain is what's in the way, and it's what's in the way that is the way. And there's no other way but through the pain. And so the more people resist the pain, the more the pain gets bigger and seems way more impossible to deal with. So what we resist will persist. What we radically accept and lean into, we then can build up the coping tools and self-agency around how we're going to manage that pain, how we're going to work with it, how we're going to learn more, understand it, and the many healthy ways we can release that pain. And knowingly know that people are doing that, especially when working with someone in inner child healing, because it's crucial and it is so healing, and it will be painful, but I learned a long time ago to embrace pain. And like I say, kites fly higher into the adversity of strong winds. And when you have two choices to make, you need to pick that one that feels impossible, the one that seems impossible. For some people here, it's still getting to full no contact. It feels impossible, or there's something holding you up, you might not. And the point is, so it's taking the most difficult choice. It's walking into, leaning into the pain, leaning into the process, being with a therapist that knows what they're doing with this stuff, because they don't all know this area. I'm not, lots do, lots don't. And that will make all the difference in the world, because you're actually going to get to experiencing some letting go. And then when people experience that, it's empowering and encourages them more to lean in and make the more difficult choices. And then accepting that your pain is just what it is, and it's okay. Accept it. Something people have to work on, but it's super important. And then you said, is it's because I just lost my BPD relationship partner? Well, yes, and that's a really painful time. And then with codependency recovery also, so you have two avenues or two causations of tremendous pain that you need to deal with. And like I said, I don't know what other people do, but when I work with clients, I try to help clients in a simultaneous process. I don't say to clients, well, I don't talk about the person with BPD or the cluster B. No. And I answer plethoras of questions, especially from new clients, on why this, why that, why the other. So the explanations can help, but also at the same time trying to help people to begin, the inner child healing work. And so the way that I find works best, I've been working with clients for 30 years, the way that I find that it's best is to do this in tandem. In a way, it makes sense. It's not like we bounce back and forth, but hey, if that happens sometimes, that's all right too, because people are in multi-layered, or at least a double layer of need for healing and recovery, and you can't separate them out. And I think some people out there that have come to me as clients and told me they worked with other people, I don't know who in the heck, whatever, doesn't matter, but that, we're trying to say, well, stop talking about that person, we need to do this. Or I don't work like that, so I don't know, I'm sure other people that might work the way I work too, but it's really important to be able to simultaneously, because these things are going to bounce back and forth between people with codependency and the need to heal that, and just being, having a relationship end with a BPD partner, or being ghosted, or whether you ended it or however it ruptured. It's really important to be not just looking at one or the other, but like actually both, because inner child healing work, recovery, family of origin work, self differentiation, other aspects of this really help people. So it's like talking about the cluster B and trying to understand and what happened there, but also getting into the other deeper work. And then that work starts helping you with the cluster B relationship recovery. So they're not separate at all. And so I don't know what other therapists do with it, but I know a lot of them probably try to separate things out. I don't believe in that. And then there's a time where there's a lot more focus on one, a lot more focus on other aspects of the work. And then, I meet everybody as an individual, and we start where they're at. So, and I don't tell people what to do. I help, I guide, I ask questions, I answer questions, I give homework. There's a process, but I don't believe in telling people what to do. And that's why I do have clients right now, but I will work with a client who's been with somebody with BPD, wants to strategize how to get him back. I'll tell them straight up, you're just going to get chewed up and spit out again. And they're like, I know, but I just need to try it one more time. And sometimes the one more time turns into 5 more times. But the point is, the ethics of that for me is that people come to me and that's what they need. They're not going to get out of the cycle until they do what they need to do. So I have a really open mind with what people need to do on the road to healing and recovery. Because I don't recommend anybody does that, but some people are doing that anyway. So I think it's helpful to people when I'm working with them and they have the support and they can process what's happening. And especially because 9 point something times out of 10, when the go around happens again, if they are successful in recontacting, which I can usually help them to be, then it's over really quickly. And then it's a good thing that we're in a process, because then they need a lot of support. And then they need to learn how to refocus, and there's a lot of pain to deal with. So I don't know where the heck I was now. Let me see if I can find it. um, no, okay. And Robert said, you nailed it, I think, AJ. They probably got defensive. Thanks for explaining it and believing in me. Well, yeah, Robert, I mean, I remember. I don't know if that one video's down, but I need to put that video back up. I remember when you had these comments, remember, and I did the video and you found it helpful? I got to transfer that one into an audio if I can find it. But I remember things about people and comments. And so, of course, I believe in you. And the other thing I was going to say is it was not only they got defensive, that means they were in countertransference and didn't even catch it. So they're pretty shoddy therapists, and I'm sorry that happened to you, but I'm really glad that what I said here was even more, helpful to you as well. I'm not saying more helpful, but helpful along the way. And yeah, totally believe in you. I believe in most people that I speak to here online and commenters. And of course, I believe in my clients. Um, and let me see. Well, your mother is going to use every tactic in the book, because you're Allie, I'm speaking to. You're going to leave, right? And there goes her supply. And so she's going to use every tactic in the book to try to keep you hooked in. So expect that and be prepared for that and be strongly bounded around that. And, well, that's good. You did stand up for yourself in your next comment. Yeah. She's just trying to start it with you for supply, right? It's provoke for supply, provokes for supply. Doesn't even matter. This is a narcissist I'm talking about, by the way, to Allie. It doesn't matter that, she probably knows the capability is her responsibility, but it's provoke for supply, provoke for supply. So you want to really be gray rock, shut it down, and maybe next time if it happens again, or in the future, because she's probably still going to try to bug you, if there's any contact at all, just look at her and just walk away. Don't even say it's not my responsibility. Give it total gray rock. Give it nothing. Let her deal with that. Uh, get out of the way and duck and let her deal with that. Um, yeah, there's a lot of people in cluster B generally, but narcissists too, that in these times, and if it's financial hardship as it is for a lot of people, then if she's spending money like crazy, I mean, they don't have narcissists have no impulse control either, and so that's going to be her problem, right? It's going to land squarely on her unless you find somebody else, but it's not going to be you or your grandma, right? Um, well, she's a grown woman, but narcissists are kids in adult bodies too. Um, Whoops. Okay. Well, that's really good, Wheels, that, you're realizing that, because, I think when you're the child and an adult child of a narcissist, there's going to be anxiety issues. There's going to be those kind of stressors. And And yeah, if she knows that, of course, a narcissist will exploit them all day long. So I'm really glad that you're aware of that and that you're looking for ways to figure out what the triggers are. And I know your situation is really different. So I hope that you can do some gray rock. But you have to be careful because ultimately, you can't just run out of the house like other people might be able to if they were under threat. Peanut Q Public, okay. You like somebody else's questions. Cargirl, I like the way you explain how you work with clients, especially the homework part. Oh, well, yeah, I just thought I'd throw that in there, because I'm uber busy, but if people are interested and I resonate, I'm still taking clients, and I hope I don't have to say one day I'm not, but there's wiggle room, but it's getting tight for sure. Um, and I feel really blessed about that because I mean I'm busier than ever, and I think that's my busier than ever isn't a whole lot about the world situation, but it does impede people's recovery after these relationships and with codependency. But I also noticed a lot of agencies around where I live and looked online to some things in several cities around in southwestern Ontario and southern Ontario. And all of the agencies that moved to virtual counseling, all those counselors are absolute, and I know some of them as friends, they're absolutely not taking clients. And so the places where people can go and get help seems to be, at least in this area, maybe others, shrinking because so many people are in need of help just to deal with the stress of this crazy world. Never mind what else might be going on in their life or not. So, um, busy, busy times for lots of people in mental health these days, for sure, but for all kinds of reasons. Um, and Allie, you said thank you, AJ. That's what I think too. She's probably just mad she's losing control. Well, supply, more to the point, right? And you said your dad didn't pay attention to it, but you're right. Sometimes I need to learn to just say nothing. Well, because that's really, the disengaging totally and saying nothing is the ultimate of gray rock. It's beyond gray rock in a way, but it gives them absolutely zero for their efforts. And they tire of that pretty quickly. Like if supply isn't going to be supply, then they got to go bug somebody else and provoke somebody else. Um, Oh, I understand that. It's hard for you because you're a very vocal person. And you said, but I know they don't deserve your reactions or energy. Yeah, but don't be too hard on yourself because you've had a lifetime of being reactive to her. And it started when you were a kid. And so, I went through the same thing too. And I had to work, 30 plus years ago, got the work done, but I had to work on getting rid of that reactivity because wow, we get inculcated and trained with that reactivity when you're the child and then adult child of a narcissist, or it could even be with BPD parent as well. Um, and Peanut Q Public. Oh, I didn't see that question. Sitai asked why BPD and bipolar are so often confused in diagnosis. I really don't have an answer for that because the answer is that they shouldn't be. And so I don't know why they are. I really don't. There's some overlapping things, but there's some stark differences. So and mainly as far as I know, it's psychiatrists that are screwing this up or whatever they're doing. I don't really have an answer for that because it doesn't make any sense to me. And so, I can usually tell a client if I'm dealing with somebody with bipolar or BPD or both. But I don't know why they mix them up. So sorry, I missed that. I must have missed that question. I'm sorry. Inquiring Cat, did you write an ebook or audiobook which focuses on skill sets and help for codependence? In the process of doing so now, so it's not out yet. And the ebooks I've done in the past, and audios are at phoenixrisingpublications.com, but truthfully, they're mostly about BPD for people with it or for exes or loved ones. So, kind of explaining, punishment and revenge and BPD rage, that kind of thing. But I'm working on putting out a lot soon. Be an ebook, be a video series, gonna be just continual things coming about skill sets and codependency recovery. And the only thing I'll say about that is I think they'll be helpful. But there's nothing like being in the process with someone as well to just augment and help you along with that. But everybody has their own choices to make on that, right? And you said, I'm currently watching all videos in the codependency playlist, and it's really so true, but not easily to have become aware of on one's own. Well, yes, and I've seen, several of your comments, and I've replied to some, and I still have others to catch up to, and I'm there. I'm always behind, but I didn't know that you were watching down that certain playlist. That's interesting. So I hope it's helpful, and yeah, because it can be really difficult to become aware on one's own because you can have some awareness, but then, yeah, you need more information and tools and skills come after some information and more awareness, right? So, and Allie, sorry. AJ, I've tried the gray rocking method, and sometimes when I say nothing, my mom still goes along with whatever will just make up her own thoughts in her own head. Well, then you have to combine in your gray rocking that you walk away, go to the bathroom, shut and lock the door. Because if you go to your room and she follows you, go to the bathroom, shut and lock the door. Leave the house if you can. And you're not going to have this problem much longer, which is wonderful, right? But so you have to just, in that case, not stay in the same space. Peanut Q Public, knowing you're as mixed up about it as C Tai, and obviously also are is valid. Oh, you are too, so it's validating. Thank you. Well, yeah, I can't explain why they can't tell the difference. I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert on bipolar, but I'm learning and I put more research time in because I do have some clients that have BP and bipolar, or they come with said diagnoses. And, so, and sometimes, well, I don't really have people that come to me saying they have bipolar, but they might. I don't remember. But the bottom line is it's really easy to suss out the difference. So I don't know. So if it's someone in your life, I can believe, maybe you can't figure it out either. Um, Inquiring Cat, what is the magnet or core psychological concept that acts as a magnet that causes a codependent person to have a repetition compulsion to choose borderlines as a partner several times in a row? Well, the answer to that question is not an all general one. It's individualized, but the general thing I can say is it's something from the family of origin and something to do with the wounded inner child. There's something that's where things repeat. That's where the seeds of codependency are sown. That's where you learned this codependent relational style that is an externalization out of things that people don't consciously realize often. So I think that's the best I can do with that in a general sense. But the core psychological concept is what's familiar and repeating for the person with codependency from childhood that might not be in your conscious awareness, that might be in your wounded inner child deep down in your unconscious. Because for some people, these wounds are more obvious, and some people are aware of them. And for some people, they're not the obvious kind of wounds. They're things that were super impacting at the age of 4 or 5 or something like that, but that people then go on and sort of bury in their unconscious and think don't matter anymore. But that inner child, wounded inner child inside people with codependency is a Geiger counter and a driver for why you keep going from borderline to borderline to borderline. So, as a man, if I can picture right, but as an adult person, you're getting attracted to people on an adult level for obviously adult reasons, but your inner child, unbeknownst to you self-consciously, is like a Geiger counter for that familiarity. That is the hope in the wounded inner child, if I can put it that way, for reparation. That finally all your giving will be met with your receiving something that matters. Only that's not the way to heal codependency. But that's the key core thing that's happening for people with codependency. They keep repeating these relationships. And to one of your comments, Inquiring Cat, because you have the perfect name. I love the way you're so inquiring. It's fantastic. And self-aware. I'm gonna be doing a video. I didn't get to it today, but I might still tonight, and I hope to get it up tomorrow or soon on what you were talking about, specifically with how, quote, normal, unquote, women are boring, and the intensity and the other issues that you were talking about with BPD women, because that's another thing. Can happen for women too, but it happens a lot for men. And when I say that, I mean nothing judgmental, whatever. Most of my client load always is a higher percentage of men than women, believe it or not. And so I understand that this is something that men really, really have a problem, a bigger struggle around. And one of the things, well, I'm not going to talk about it here because I'm going to wait till I get the video together. But I was going to say that I've had many other clients who've expressed what you did in your one comment. So I just want you to know I'm going to be doing a video on that. And that's what I alluded to in the last video I put up. But all my videos aren't going to be 30 minutes and 49 minutes long. Sorry about that. But they were important, and I guess I needed to say all that I needed to say in each. Um, and I hope that answers your question at least sometime, partly or somewhat. Um, oh, you're welcome, Allie. And Robert, I've been reading a paper on rumination, and I think the victim blaming and shame shifting, yeah, which is also shame blaming or blame, I don't know, victim shaming, but anyway, whatever we call it. Um, so you said blaming and shame shifting make it worse. It seems only CBT helps with it. Well, that's a really good point because when I work with people to help them through the rumination and to understand more about what's going on there, but yeah, it's really a cognitive behavioral approach really does work best with that, and there's many tools and techniques to get at that. But because it's about negative core beliefs, and that's what's really pushing the ruminating, along with what everyone's thinking about in the here and now, and so for reframing and getting in touch with the inner critic narrative and inner child, it's really helpful to use in some of that process cognitive behavioral therapy without a doubt. So I'm glad that you're finding that helpful and that you're becoming, oh, I'm scrolling the wrong window again, more aware of what is making the rumination, more difficult. And it is difficult for everybody to be able to free yourself from that. um oh, interesting. Is that a book? um Hang on. If I don't take a picture, I'll never see it again because I don't really rewatch these. um did that just jump out of my oh, there it is. Okay, so Robert mentioned book, I think it is, right? Rumination Relationships with Physical Health by Randy A. Sanson, MD, and Lori A. Sanson, MD. Well, yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to pass on that one simply because, oh, I got so many books. But yeah, no, if that's helpful, that's great. And Robert, on how AJ talks about neural pathways and Dr. Bessel talks about cognitive deficiency from trauma, makes me think how ruminating is bad for brain function. Well, yes, and it is an effect of trauma, right? And trauma can impact the brain, but of course, in BPD, codependency, or the rumination, what you're describing, Robert, there's no plasticity there, and and people can definitely heal and change that. And so I think too that when you made a comment, I think was it in a live stream or in a video? I think it was in a live stream about Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps the Score, and he and other clinicians, because some people out there in YouTube land who don't matter to me at all think that I just make stuff up, and oh, it's because I'm a borderline that I say it's a trauma response because yada 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 yada. Blah. Talk about lack of logic. Anyway, but yes, there are more and more clinicians realizing this, and I'm going to start talking about more of them and their work that informs me because I don't just make crap up, right? And nor do I invent it. you know, I read and I stay well researched, and I try to understand so that I can have as much impact as possible in videos, and even more so in my client work, obviously. Oh, you're very welcome, Inquiring Cat. Sorry I didn't get there in time, Gary. to that comment. Um, well, yeah, but that's narcissist, like big time. They love seeing others in misery. It's sadistic too. Um, and Robert said, that's the free paper, by the way. Oh, free paper. Okay. Wanted to cite it. If anyone Googles the title, oh, they can find, okay, so it's a paper, not a book. That's good to know, Robert. Thank you for that. And Allie, AJ, do you think ruminating is not being able to express things from your thoughts or words, so they just twirl around in your mind? That's part of it. That's not all of it, but that's definitely a part of it. Because in ruminating, like after a relationship with somebody with BPD, and if they get ghosted or the breakup, whatever happens, people in their rumination, I've had many clients express to me, I just keep starting to write a letter in my head. I just keep trying to say over and over what, because it's what they didn't get to say. It's the no closure effect, right? That's a huge hurdle for people to get through in recovery. To know, don't reach back out to that cluster B ever looking for closure, because you're never going to get it. You're just going to get rewounded. And so, in the process of working with someone like myself or someone else you would choose to work with, then you can work through and get your own closure without them. And by the way, how do I know that? Not only have I had a few clunker relationships with cluster Bs after my own recovery, I'm in a healthy relationship now. I've had healthy relationships in between the clunkers, so to speak. But I've been in your shoes on the other side. And then with a narcissistic, BPD, MPD mother had dark triad father and family of like rife with all kinds of like borderlines, etc. I learned a long time ago that it's really important to rumination happens, but like I remember all the rumination I went through and thinking about my family of origin many, many years ago, not anymore. Well, like over 3 decades ago, where it was like, but I want to say this, but I want to say that, but I want to say the other. Because you want to get heard, you want that sense of closure, or maybe you just want to tell that person off or both. But the thing is, know that you're going to be putting your own self respect, vulnerability, and hopefully building towards self esteem and self worth on the line, and it isn't worth it. Because I know that it can be done on people working with someone as I did it many decades ago, 3 decades ago, because I was able to get rid of all that. And when I don't even think about my family of origin, except I mentioned it here where it's germane and might be helpful to someone. But so part of rumination is definitely what you didn't get to say. Is definitely the no closure. And it's about cognitive dissonance and then some. So it's really important. And Robert gave another, it's great that you shared another resource that people can read about that. Um, and Robert said, I just watched that vid you recommended with Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. It was awesome. Yes, and is that you alluded to a video or something of his prior. Was it this paper or was it another video? And was it not the video that I put on my community tab? Because I'd be interested to know, Robert. Because I don't have a lot of time to be watching a lot of videos and looking around and because I got reading time, research time, but too much client work time. I'm not complaining about that. I really want to source some more so that people can understand, and I think most people do, but to make it crystal clear, then when I'm talking about things as trauma responses, whether people still want to go with the APA's pathologizing personality, false construct of mental illness or not, matters not to me. But for clinicians, it's really important, and there's a lens, and the whole thing is changing and moving, and largely outside of America and largely outside of North America because Canada gets subsumed with everything from America, not everything, but too much of the American Psychiatric Pseudoscience Association. Huh. Anyway, um, and by the way, I don't have any skin in the game. Don't have anything personal against psychiatry. I've just spoken to too many psychiatrists who know what I know about their profession, but they can't say it out loud. Shh. You know. Uh, well, I'm glad that was helpful, Ellie. And Inquiring Cat, there's definitely an impulse to reach out for closure, and I can see how it could be a disaster, like pouring gasoline on embers of a fire. Yeah, and it'll just hurt you more. It won't help. And sometimes they get a kick out of it too. Not so much people with BPD, but narcissists. And so it's really important that you take care of yourself and know that you're going to be able to work through it without, putting yourself out there and getting hurt again, because people with BPD untreated have no idea what they're doing. Let me make that clear too. Sometimes in some realms of interaction they can be manipulative or punishing, and they can know they're doing that, but there's so much of what they're feeling and what they're going through and why and the way they're responding to things, they don't have a friggin' clue. So they don't have a self. They don't know how to take personal responsibility. How can you take personal responsibility when you don't have a container of self? And I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying they need treatment. And the other thing is, so they definitely aren't going to be able to explain it to you because they don't even understand it themselves until unless significantly treated or treated through recovery. So where, of course, I learned a lot of what I know today from the inside out the hard way. Even though in revisionist history I didn't even actually have full blown BPD, but there you go, whatever. But they don't have the closure to give, even if they had the personal responsibility to give the closure. They don't have the emotional intelligence, the emotional maturity, or the relational skills to even go there. Now, when I say that, that's predominantly most that are untreated or not significantly treated. But there's the odd person out there, maybe they've had some treatment. They will give some modicum of closure, but it usually ends up in blaming the other person, shaming the other person, victim shaming and blaming, and with a bunch of excuses and maybe one piece of insight, if that. And that's going to be fleeting insight at best. And by the way, when they come a hoovering back, oh, I'm better now. Oh, I get it now. Oh, I'm so sorry now. Oh, I'm going to therapy now. Never mind that, because they're not changed. Doesn't matter. If they go to therapy, it's going to take multiple amounts of years. And it's going to take at least 2 to 3 years, probably in most processes, for real beginnings of change that they can even catch triggers and stuff. So don't hook your horse up to that wagon that ain't going nowhere in a hurry. Hit your, yeah, whatever. I said it. I won't try to fix it now. Um, Cargill, you laughing out loud when I said clunkers. Well, that's just the way I frame it now, because what else should I say about it, really, right? And if I talk about anything like that on the channel, I just want people to understand and realize that, I too have been in your shoes with the BPD, NPD, alcoholic, 2004, 2006. Quiet borderline, okay, when I was in my own recovery, but quiet borderline, you know, for about 4 years, and she took her life almost 2 years ago. So I've had those clunkers, but what it means is, and in the last relationship, I wasn't really so codependent. But prior to that, oh my God, I was the good ever, codependent. So know what it's like to be in your shoes out there. Just because I was on the other side of labeling a BPD that wasn't really a diagnosis that partially fit, but in 1975, nobody knew about complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So I now understand that I really never had full-blown BPD, but I had some traits and I had massive CPTSD for sure, and a whopping amount of codependency. Because I was always trying to rescue my parents from themselves, Like, I'm trying to get a drop of hello. Do I exist? Am I really here? Can you see me? No. So I ended up, got parentified along the way, like when they wouldn't be well and they needed to go to a doctor and they wouldn't go to a doctor, and I'd be like 9 years old going, but you need to go to a doctor because, and, the Dark Chad father never listened to me, and so his appendix ruptured in him, and his gallbladder went off on him, and but I knew, I was like, I'm not saying I know everything, but I had an idea that it was probably that, and I suggested, I don't know, I'm not the doctor, but go to one, and no, of course not. So, that was all codependent rescuing, right? Of a dude that did nothing but abuse me. So why do we do it? Why have we done it? And when I was with the BPD, NPD alcoholic, that clunker relation, oh my God, was I ever in the codependent rescuing role? And I may as well have just flushed my head down the toilet. It would have been less painful. So I do know where people are coming from. And, it took me 18 months. It took me 6 months to get that person out of my freaking skull. It really did. There was so much I wanted to say to her. But I just went no contact, told her piss off, said I'm done. And I don't know what happened to her. And I was worried because I thought, well, I'm online. She could email me really easily, but she was spiraling down and probably already was on the cusp and signs of um, what's that called? Alcohol dementia, basically. So don't know if she just floated off in a sea of alcohol or what happened to her. And you know what? I equally as much couldn't care less, really, about that person. And yeah, Wheels, I really hope you can get out of there. Um, oh, there's the link to the paper that Robert mentioned. Thank you for that, Wheels. Um, and Robert, the body keeps the score, brain, mind, and body in the healing of trauma. You say by center scene. Well, that's interesting because the body keeps the score was Bessel van der Kolk, wasn't it? Like, I don't know what you mean by center scene unless that has to do with him too. But yeah, and the other thing that's key, right, is that psychiatry was trying to forward, may still be trying, the pseudoscience of American psychiatry. That BPD is a brain disease, a brain disorder, and the hardwiring, blah, 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 blah. No, trauma impacts the brain, especially in infancy and childhood, and trauma impacts the brain of adults traumatized too. But when you get into a healing and recovery process, neuroplasticity is part of that. And I've already explained in other live streams how I'm living proof of that. I'm not going to bore people with that. Or maybe one day I'll do a video on that and bore people with that. I don't know if it's helpful or not. Um, oh, you got a link to where you think Robert mentioned a video. And I wonder, that's not the same one on my community tab, Wheels? Um, the other thing about trauma, and BPD as a trauma response, codependency, NPD, so many things, CPTSD, PTSD, all trauma responses, is that a lot of the pioneering clinicians in this area of trauma, they don't speak often enough about borderline personality. So, they're speaking in more general terms and about other things, but there are people that do speak to BPD and it is very applicable. So, inquiring cat, I mean, knowing that idealization phase will not ever be as strong as when first meeting the person helps to have more self control about not going back into the relationship with untreated BPD person. Well, if you haven't got there yet, inquiring cat, I would recommend you watch my video inside BPD idealization because, well, after the devaluation, most people with BPD are not going to ever get back to that idealization or any idealization in lots of cases. They'll just come to a base mood state that isn't exactly devaluation but doesn't idealize you anymore. And so in my video inside BPD idealization explains that, yeah, you're having a wonderful experience and you don't know what's happening, you don't know who this person really is, etc. But they're still not seeing you in idealization any more than they do in devaluation. That's something that can help people to understand. It can be painful, but it's understanding that's worth having, I believe. Robert, that's the video I quoted. All center scene is the YouTube channel. A center scene. Why did I say all? That word is not there. Oh, okay, great. Thank you for that. And Robert, do you know or does Wheels know if that's the video I put on my community tab or if we're probably talking about a different video. In which case I'm gonna have to track that one down for sure. Um yeah, if you wouldn't mind checking, Wheels, it would help me to know. But I'm thinking, well, it might not be. I have no idea. Robert says it's a different one from the one that I recommended on my community tab. Okay, thank you for that. Um And Robert said the one AJ recommended is on how childhood trauma affects regulation. Yes, which would of course be applicable to BPD, but whether or not I've only seen part of it because I haven't had time to get back to it. But I know it's a good video, and I trust his work, and I follow his work. So I don't know if he actually gets to speaking about BPD specifically or just childhood trauma as it affects emotional regulation, but it does. And wouldn't that be a core key issue in borderline personality? It absolutely is. Um, oh, thank you for that, Wheels. So if you're interested in inquiring Cat or anybody else or anybody who's watching this later, there's the link to my video, Inside BPD Idealization. Does he, she love you? Yes. Um, thank you for that, Wheels. I really appreciate that. So, with that said, though, I'm just aware of the time, and I'm just aware that the longer I make these, the less people can get through them. Might be a good time to just end for now, but I'm going to try to live stream. Well, I don't know. Unless I pop on tomorrow, I don't know if I'll be able to live stream. During the week, just too darn busy and got to find a little time for my partner for life and my pets and just some downtime too, which is cool. I'm going to have some downtime tomorrow and a little bit of time with my partner and some friends, but I just want to be in a dark room for an hour and go, oh, and just kind of, totally relax. Um, yeah, well, I'm glad the link is there because it makes it easier to find. Because, the more that I have the channel grows, like it's growing with subscribers and views, and that's great. But the more that the video numbers grow, like I'm putting, oh yeah, I need to say this at the beginning of every live stream. I forget. But on the community tab, sometimes I will recommend somebody else's video, like recently. But I'm putting up some of my older videos, whether they're well watched or not, some better watched than others. But people can't find, so people seem to be going down the community tab that are newer to the channel and looking back, because I have videos that go back as far as 11 years ago where I look like I was 30, I think. But what happened in 11 years? Never mind. So anyway, I just look like such a kid there, but that's just me looking at me. I don't want to look at me. So there you go. Robert, woo my brain after all that searching. Thanks, AJ. Well, yeah, and really, if people look on the community tab, I am as people are commenting, finding older videos, and I'm like, oh yeah, that one. I'll put it on the community tab because I don't remember. I have the list, I have copies, but I don't remember what they're all about, right? I can't. I come across one of mine when I'm just looking something else up, and it's like, oh, I don't remember doing that one. It's the same thing with my blogs and stuff. I'll just be doing a general search on something. I just want to fact check real quick, and my own articles come up, and I'm like, well, that's not too helpful. Well, actually, a couple were, but usually I'm not looking for my stuff. That's for sure. Peanut Q Public, enjoy your well-deserved break, and thank you. Oh, you're very welcome. And I do take breaks, and I get breaks. Except for some really crazy busy client days, I usually get a break somewhere during the day because I pencil in an appointment with myself called I'm going to power nap now for 20 minutes, or I'm just going to go out with the dogs, or I'm going to eat lunch, which often doesn't happen at lunchtime, but Allie, okay, thank you, AJ, for everything, and have a great relaxation time. Yes, I do tend to do that well. Alina, thank you very much. Oh, you're welcome. And I'm glad my videos are helpful for you. Inquiring Cat to Car Girl. Oh yeah, let's keep learning, and it's nice to also read your comments. Yes, well, you're commenting often. I love it, Inquiring Cat, and Car Girl has too, and it's great. I encourage people to comment more and support each other and share experiences with each other, and and I'm wide open to hearing people's opinions. If you disagree with me, that's fine. What I'm not wide open to is people that want to abuse me and, because they can't logically or rationally or no, never mind. Respectfully, that's the word I'm looking for. Just say their point because I'll engage anybody's point, but not if it's put across in an abusive way, right? So there you go. And Wheel says, no problem, dude. Thanks for all the help. And good night. And you're welcome, Car Girl. And yes, I hope you do too, Wheels. And I hope it for you, right? I hope it for you, totally. You're welcome, Sitai. Nancy, thank you so much again, AJ. I've been watching your videos more often lately. Well, I hope they're helpful. And you're welcome. And you take care. And you're welcome, little girl. And yes, everybody have a good night or whatever time it is, wherever you are. And take the best care of yourself you can. And I look forward to next time. And in the meantime, I would just say if you're watching videos and they're helpful and you haven't subscribed yet, Please do that and support the channel in that way. Thumbs up are always appreciated. Love comments. So the more you want to comment, the more you want to share, comment back and forth to each other. Please feel free. Absolutely fantastic stuff happening on this channel. In that regard, with people's comments and supporting each other is what I meant. Corn Cat, really looking forward to the ebook. Have a good one. Yeah, you take care. And when I get these things ready, video series, audio, ebooks, all the different media types of things I'm going to be doing, I'll definitely be announcing it here. But there is a free membership and email list people can join and subscribe to at ajmahari.co. So everybody take care, and thank you for your questions. Thank you for your insights, for all you sharing with each other, supporting each other. Want to keep this channel to be a healthy, growing, thriving community where people can feel safe and inquire and share and support each other and ask questions and sometimes just unload what's really too much to hold at any given point in time. So thank you so much for your participation to those who were listening. And everybody take care and have a good night. Now I have to figure out how to get out of here because the other thing wasn't working right. So I think I will do that now. Going to be a brief pause because I don't want to have it cut off in the middle.